Kenji Kazama, a high school student who tries hard to look like a tough delinquent, ends up getting dragged into the strangest school club after encountering a group of eccentric girls who practically force him to join. Amid chaotic games and ridiculous conflicts, he struggles to maintain his pride while slowly becoming tied to the unique personalities of the female members who constantly throw his life into disorder. Without realizing it, the constant arguments, playful teasing, and unexpected moments gradually change the way Kenji sees friendship, care, and the meaning of belonging together. One day, Roka was handing out flyers in front of the school, the papers scattered everywhere after she was accidentally bumped by passing students. The flyers were recruitment forms for the game development club. While Roka was picking them up, Kenji suddenly came over to help her. He advised her to be more careful. Roka was about to thank him when Kenji's friends, Yokoshima and Hiroshi, approached. The three of them walked down the school corridor, surprising several students along the way. They were known as the Kazama Gang, consisting of Yokoshima, nicknamed Littlefoot, Hiroshi, known as Long Mountain, and Kenji as the gang's leader. Kenji complained to nearby students for forgetting his name. Yokoshima pointed out that their group had never actually caused trouble. Even though they looked like delinquents, they had never done anything truly bad. He even suggested that they disband the Kazama Gang and join a school club instead, but Kenji felt it was already too late for them to suddenly start living as ordinary students. Meanwhile, the game development club had received a notice of disbandment because it had not met the minimum membership requirements. Inside the clubroom, Roka, Shidose, Sakura, and Minami gathered to discuss the situation threatening their club's existence. Sakura wondered why their club was in danger of being shut down. Shidose explained that although they were registered as a cultural club, they had never submitted any creative projects. All they had done so far was play games. Without actually creating a game, the game development club would not be recognized as an official club, and Shidose had only just realized that problem. Roka also added that the club lacked enough registered members, and that day was their final chance to recruit new ones. Later that afternoon, the Kazama Gang walked together while jokingly discussing their plans to conquer the world. Hiroshi suggested forming a golf bag club, but Kenji immediately dismissed the idea as boring. Yokoshima believed cultural clubs probably had manga or games, so he proposed persuading one of them to share their collection. Not long after, they noticed smoke coming from a classroom. Kenji rushed inside, intending to help anyone who might be in danger. Roka was surprised to see him and wondered why he had entered so suddenly. Kenji asked what everyone was doing. Roka claimed the flames were only part of a dramatic demonstration. Hiroshi handed Kenji a fire extinguisher, and Kenji quickly sprayed it toward the fire effect. Everyone cheered when the flames disappeared. Roka seemed confused about why Kenji had taken the situation so seriously. Kenji questioned why there had been fire effects inside the clubroom in the first place. Fireworks were scattered across the floor, making the scene look suspicious. Suddenly, Yokoshima was startled by Minami's prank involving a small electric gadget, while Hiroshi was splashed with water by Sakura. It turned out Minami and Sakura had staged the act to keep outsiders from interfering with their activities. Roka then attempted to make Kenji forget what he had seen by continuing the club's imaginative roleplay involving elemental powers. Kenji grew increasingly confused by the conversation. Roka explained that everyone possessed a special element within themselves, but Kenji reminded them that they were living in the real world. At that moment, Minami and Sakura held him in place as part of their exaggerated performance, which only made Kenji panic and misunderstand the situation. Roka asked Kenji to simply forget everything he had witnessed, yet Kenji remained puzzled rather than convinced. Roka collapsed dramatically, surprised that her performance had not affected him at all. Shortly afterward, Shidose stepped forward, proudly claiming to represent the earth element, and struck Kenji with what she called an earth punch. Kenji groaned in pain and insisted that elemental powers were not real. Shidose casually explained that she had just been building a sandcastle earlier, her hands were still covered in sand, and that was why she decided to name the move the earth punch. Kenji wanted to run away, but he suddenly remembered his two friends. Shidose felt confused because their attacks had failed to erase Kenji's memory. Roka then suggested that the four of them combine their elements into one. Fearing for his safety, Kenji immediately took off. The four girls continued chasing him, while Kenji kept running to avoid them, nearly bumping into people along the way. Kenji sprinted all the way to the bicycle parking area. He could not understand the game development club at all, and to him, none of its members seemed remotely normal. Suddenly, Roka appeared and startled him. Instead of attacking, she thanked him for putting out the fire earlier and promised that she would never set off fireworks inside the clubroom again. Kenji was baffled and questioned why anyone would light fireworks indoors in the first place. Roka explained that she and her friends had planned to create a cool illusion to attract new members. Kenji still could not believe her actions had nearly caused a fire. Roka also thanked him for picking up a pamphlet for her that morning. Only then did Kenji realize that Roka was the girl recruiting students earlier for that unusual club. He promised not to tell anyone about the incident as long as Roka stopped following him. Roka admitted that she had actually been trying to invite him to join her club. She introduced herself as the president of the game development club and said she wanted to recruit him, but Kenji firmly stated that he had absolutely no interest in a gaming club. Roka corrected him, emphasizing that hers was not a gaming club, but a game development club. Roka then placed her hands on Kenji's shoulders. Kenji quickly said that her fire element Moe attack would not work on him. Roka calmly explained that the fire element was only a distraction, and that her true element was darkness. Moments later, Kenji's vision went completely black, and he could no longer see anything around him. At the same time, Hiroshi and Yokoshima regained consciousness and began searching for Kenji. Meanwhile, Kenji found himself tied up with his head completely covered. He had been taken by the game development club. Roka presented him with two choices: obey her and join the club, or face a barrage of elemental attacks. Feeling pressured, Kenji reluctantly agreed to join the game development club. After Kenji announced his decision, the members introduced themselves properly. Roka was the club president, Shirose was a second-year student, and Sakura was a first-year student. Kenji immediately shouted, asking them to untie him. Shirose nudged his leg to get his attention and asked whether he had been listening to what they said, teasing him when he accidentally moved closer while struggling to free himself. Kenji continued struggling, demanding that they remove the covering from his head. Roka finally removed the hood and untied him. Kenji could not understand why they had gone that far. According to Roka, if he had not been restrained, he would never have listened to her explanation. Kenji thought her methods were terrifying. He also questioned why they relied on such strange elemental gimmicks. Shirose then asked Kenji to write his name on the club registration form. Kenji worried that if the form reached a teacher, he might end up in serious trouble, but he also felt he would be in trouble if he refused Roka and the others. With little choice, he filled out the registration form. Chidose was even surprised at how obediently he complied. After handing the completed form to Chidose, Kenji quickly tried to leave. He thought that if he reached the teacher's office first, he could retrieve the form and pretend he knew nothing about it. However, he was shocked to learn that Chidose had already given the form to a teacher who was currently inside the clubroom with him. Kenji was stunned to discover that Minami was actually a teacher. She explained that she served as the advisor for the game development club. Panicking, Kenji grabbed the form and ran away. Chidose and Roka immediately chased after him. Kenji realized that he had completely miscalculated the situation. Suddenly, Sakura appeared running beside him. It turned out she had been waiting earlier, preparing for the perfect moment. Kenji called her foolish, yet at the same time admitted that her timing was surprisingly clever. Sakura introduced herself properly as a first-year student with the water element and asked Kenji to hand over the registration form. However, she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to bring water and briefly left to get some first. Kenji could not help but wonder whether elements were really that important to her. Not long after, Roka managed to catch up to Kenji, forcing him to stop walking. She spoke in an adorable, persuasive way, hoping he would hand over the registration form, but he remained unmoved. Roka nearly lost her balance, yet she managed to steady herself. Suddenly, Kenji's vision went completely dark, as if he had been swallowed by shadows. Kenji told Roka to stop taking her strange obsession so seriously and thought he needed to leave quickly before her other clubmates arrived. Roka calmly explained that Chidose would not be coming because she was at the sandbox training to strengthen herself. Kenji could not understand why elemental themes mattered so much to them. Realizing that Roka was the only opponent in front of him, he pulled away the black cloth that she considered her territory. Unfortunately, he stepped the wrong way and nearly fell, but Roka quickly grabbed his leg and stopped him. Kenji asked her to let go, yet Roka refused. To her, Kenji was the long-awaited candidate they had been searching for, so she would not release him, even if it meant risking herself falling as well. Kenji told her to stop acting overly cute, but Roka insisted that this was simply her true personality. After a while, she began to struggle because the position put pressure on her stomach. She worried that staying like that too long might affect her future, especially since she dreamed of having one son and one daughter someday. Feeling guilty, Kenji apologized and asked her to let go. But at that moment, Chidose and Sakura arrived and helped pull him up. The three of them successfully saved Kenji. Still surprised that he had made it out safely, Kenji finally handed the form to Roka, introduced himself properly, and officially declared that he would join the game development club. The next day, Kenji had no idea what awaited him. He realized he had joined the club purely because he got carried away by the moment. He told Hachi and Yokoshima about it, but unfortunately their memories of the incident seemed completely gone. Kenji concluded that it was probably better not to involve his friends any further. Not long afterward, Ataru ran toward him while shouting his name. Ataru looked extremely worried and was convinced that Kenji must have suffered some kind of internal injury. As it turned out, Ataru was the vice president of the student council, and the four of them had been friends since their days at Fuji Grade School. Ataru could hardly believe that they had all turned into delinquents after entering high school. Ataru had come because he heard that Kenji joined the game development club. According to him, the club was dangerous, or more precisely, the true danger was Chidosei's authority. Kenji was shocked to learn that Chidosei was actually the student council president at Fuji High School. With her firm leadership and natural charisma, even teachers respected her authority. She was essentially the undisputed queen of the school. Her influence was so strong that even the major delinquent factions on campus feared her. Kenji had never realized that so many rival groups existed beyond his own circle. Ataru compared Kenji's group to just the tip of an iceberg. Apparently, Chidosei had long been Ataru's greatest rival. Unexpectedly, Chidosei overheard their conversation and immediately called them out. She happened to be inside the girls' locker room at the time and accused them of spying. Ataru quickly tried to explain that he had no such intention, leaving Kenji confused about why he sounded so apologetic. Kenji argued that spying was impossible since the locker room was located on the second floor, but Chidosei insisted that teamwork could make anything possible. The boys briefly imagined how such teamwork might work, unintentionally leaving Ataru out of their scenario. Feeling excluded, Ataru became annoyed, only for Chidosei to tease him further, saying that being overlooked was exactly why he had lost the student council president election to her. As vice president, Ataru knew that any mistake would give Chidosei the chance to completely outshine him, and strangely, he found that rivalry motivating. Chidosei, however, showed little interest in the exchange and simply told them to leave. Kenji jokingly asked whether she planned to use one of her earth element techniques, but Chidosei confidently claimed she could defeat them without any special effort at all. To everyone's surprise, Ataru suddenly prepared himself as if ready to accept any challenge she threw at them, shocking Kenji and the others. Kenji wondered why Ataru, who always told them to change their behavior, was now acting so recklessly. Seeing that words were ineffective, Chidosei prepared to push a storage rack from above. Kenji quickly moved out of the way, but Ataru remained standing still. He refused to run, believing that running would mean repeating all his past defeats. He also said that he was doing this to protect Kenji. Touched by his determination, Yokoshima and Hiroshi stepped forward to help Ataru face Chidosei. Meanwhile, Kenji felt strangely left behind. Ataru and Chidosei ended up struggling over control of the rack. Noticing Kenji hesitating, Ataru told him they could not do anything without him, and asked for his help so they could finally change. Yokoshima and Hiroshi admitted they could only hold the weight for about a minute. Hearing that, Kenji leaped forward and joined them, pushing the rack back together. With one final effort, Kenji kicked the rack back into the room. Kenji and Ataru felt relieved, believing they had finally defeated Chidosei. She acknowledged Kenji's ability, but in the end she still considered herself the winner, since their actions caused both Kenji and Ataru to be labeled as suspicious loiterers near the girls' locker room. As a result, the two of them were suspended from school. That afternoon, just before dismissal, Roka approached Kenji and informed him about the upcoming Game Development Club meeting schedule. Instead of responding enthusiastically, Kenji questioned why he even needed to attend. Roka then asked whether he truly had no interest in joining the club. Kenji felt bad refusing her, especially since he had already submitted his registration form. In the end, whether he liked it or not, Kenji accepted that he now had to take part in the Game Development Club's activities. Ataru and Kenji were being questioned by the vice principal in the student guidance office. Both of them tried to convince the vice principal that everything had been a misunderstanding. They insisted that it had only been a fight and that they would never do anything inappropriate. However, they could not deny the fact that they had entered the girls' changing room. At that moment, Roka peeked through the door and labeled them as shameless. Startled, Ataru and Kenji shouted at the same time. Suddenly, Kenji woke up and realized the entire situation had only been a dream. The suspension, however, was very real. Both he and Ataru were still officially suspended from high school. On the same day, a student named Takao visited Minami in the teacher's office to discuss the planned disbandment of the Game Development Club. Minami explained that the club would not be dissolved because it had successfully gained a new member. Meanwhile, the members of the Game Development Club gathered in their clubroom with Minami, feeling relieved that the club had been saved. Sakura mentioned that it was all thanks to Roka, who had managed to persuade Kenji to join. Sakura even forgot Kanji's name at one point, and Chitose jokingly referred to him using a teasing nickname related to his earlier misunderstanding. Roka then asked how long Kanji's suspension would last. Chitose guessed it would continue until next week, but Minami clarified that Kanji would be allowed to return as soon as the following day. Later that day, Kanji sat alone in a park, reflecting on his suspension after the incident involving the girls' changing room. He absent-mindedly petted a nearby cat, but the animal suddenly ran away in fear. When Kanji turned around, he saw 4 figures wearing cloaks standing behind him. Surprised, he asked who they were. The cloaked figures seemed unsure of how to respond at first, but soon they began chasing him. Kanji prepared himself to confront them, yet instead of attacking, the 4 figures joined hands and began circling him repeatedly. Their leader even became dizzy from spinning so much. Kanji grew confused, unable to understand what they were trying to accomplish. Feeling as if he was being mocked, he warned them to reveal their identities. 3 of them finally removed their disguises. They were Takao, Sakuragoka, and Tsutsumi. They explained that they were members of the original game development club, while Roka's group was actually a fake version of the club. Kanji was shocked by this revelation and began to understand why Roka and her friends had seemed somewhat suspicious to him. Tsutsumi urged Takao to quickly explain what Kanji needed to do. Takao then asked Kanji to immediately withdraw from the fake game development club. If he left, the club would lose enough members to be automatically disbanded. Kanji finally realized why Roka had been so determined to recruit him. He questioned Takao's request, and she explained that the fake club had been on the verge of dissolution until this sudden involvement complicated everything. Although Kanji had never truly intended to join the club, he wondered why he should follow Takao's demands. Kanji tried to walk away, but the group repeatedly blocked his path, which only irritated him further. Takao grew nervous, worried that Kanji might react aggressively, yet she admitted that she believed he would never hurt a girl. Kanji then looked at Sakuragoka and asked whether Sakuragoka was actually a girl. Sakuragoka confirmed that she was female, while Tsutsumi anxiously watched the situation unfold. Sakuragoka appeared to be a beautiful girl, though her appearance often caused confusion among others. Sensing Kanji's doubt, Sakuragoka removed her cloak to prove her identity. By coincidence, she was wearing the girl's school uniform at the time. Tsutsumi was shocked, since Sakuragoka had previously refused her suggestion to wear that uniform. She felt annoyed that Sakuragoka revealed that side of herself to Kanji instead of to her. After seeing the proof, Kanji finally accepted that Sakuragoka was a girl, and Sakuragoka immediately relaxed in relief. Kanji felt confused. He had not done anything yet, but the 3 of them already looked completely worn out. He wanted to leave as soon as possible, only to realize there was still one more person he had to face. The cloaked figure standing before him was tall and broad, and Kanji was certain the person beneath the cloak was a man. Tsutsumi worried about her friend, explaining that the tall figure was named Yamada. Even though Yamada looked intimidating, he was actually shy and soft-spoken. Yamada removed the cloak and claimed to be a woman, but Kanji reacted impulsively and struck him. Takao was shocked that Kanji had hurt a member of her club, and she felt responsible for standing up for her friends. Kanji suggested that Takao should simply drop the idea of fighting, and Tsutsumi surprisingly agreed with him. Takao admitted that she might lose in terms of strength, technique, and speed, but she believed she could still defeat Kanji through intelligence. Takao then considered using official authority to settle the matter, wondering whether people would believe her version of events or Kanji's honesty. Sakuragoka was convinced that between a supposed troublemaker and a competent club president, people would naturally trust Takao. Tsutsumi joked that if Kanji were more interested in chests instead of feet, Takao might even try to charm him. Takao did not understand what her friends were talking about, while Kanji was baffled by the rumor that he had a foot obsession. Apparently, they had heard it from Minami. Kanji could hardly believe that a teacher like Minami had described him that way. Blushing, Tsutsumi teasingly asked whether Kanji also liked thighs and ankles, continuing her playful remarks in a way that embarrassed him. Annoyed, Kanji firmly stated that he simply liked girls with confidence and presence. Tsutsumi continued teasing him, asking whether he planned to get too close to Takao. Takao immediately told Kanji to keep his distance. Not long after that, a police car arrived. Kanji assumed Takao had actually called the police, but she quickly denied it. The officers approached them and explained that they had received a report claiming civilians were attacked by a group dressed in black. The police suspected Yamada. With little choice, everyone admitted that a fight had occurred earlier and claimed the real troublemakers had already run away. They all insisted they were not involved. After hearing the statements, the police ended up taking Yamada into custody. Takao and the others believed the incident must have been caused by the fake game development club and became determined to settle things with them later. The next day, Chidose and her friends were acting out a dramatic scene, pretending that Chidose had defeated everyone. In the final moment, she launched an attack toward Roka, who acted as though she had run out of strength and was blown back by Chidose's overwhelming power. Roka noticed Kanji standing nearby and silently hoped he would defeat Chidose so she could finally rest. Kanji tried to close the door, but Roka stopped him. Kanji could not understand why they were performing such a ridiculous skit, especially since their acting was far from convincing. Chidose complained that Kanji had interrupted a very exciting scene. She explained that they were playing a hero game in which a hero attempted to stop the Demon King's special compression ritual. Kanji admitted he had no idea what she was talking about. Roka even invited him to play the role of Hero A, but Kanji loudly refused, saying he had no intention of joining a play that did not even have a script for him. Roka smiled and revealed that they had all been waiting for him. That day, she had gathered everyone to discuss their plans for the upcoming Fuzhou High School Cultural Festival. Kanji had not even realized their club would participate in the festival. He was about to ask something when Takao suddenly arrived and told them not to get arrogant just because they had gained a new member. Kanji was surprised to see Takao there, and Chidose was equally surprised that Kanji recognized her. Kanji explained that a lot had happened between him and Takao the previous day. Chidose teasingly asked whether Kanji had behaved inappropriately toward Takao, which he immediately denied. Takao criticized Roka and the others, saying their club spent more time relaxing and eating snacks than actually making games. She declared her intention to shut the club down. However, when Chidose asked how she planned to do that, Takao suddenly fell silent. Taking advantage of the moment, Chidose and Sakura playfully retaliated by tossing sand and splashing water at her. Kanji could only watch and wondered why Roka was not joining her friends. Instead, Roka questioned what kind of person Kanji thought she was. Roka moved as if to help Takao, but Takao refused her assistance and accused her of being a traitor. Chidose found it strange that Takao was still angry at someone as adorable as Roka. Frustrated, Takao ran outside while declaring that she would definitely disband the Fate Game Development Club. She quickly left the area, with Roka following right behind her. Kanji asked why there were 2 game development clubs at the school. Chidose explained that Takao held a grudge against Roka, because Roka had once pushed Takao's club to the brink of shutting down. Back when Roka was still a first-year student, she stood out as unusual, and people tended to avoid what they did not understand. As a result, many students kept their distance from her. Kanji initially assumed that Roka might have eventually snapped under the pressure and revealed a darker side of herself. However, the truth was different. It was actually Chidose who lost her temper toward the other members. Because of that incident, the club continued to shrink, and Roka chose to leave, feeling responsible for what had happened. Afterward, Sakura invited Roka to start a new game development club together with Chidose. Chidose had been Roka's childhood friend and closest companion, and she had her own way of helping Roka recover. That was why Chidose insisted that Kanji bring Roka back before things could turn worse. Kanji could not understand why he had to be the one to do it. Chidose even asked Sakura to pressure Kanji into agreeing if he refused. In the end, Kanji reluctantly went to find Roka. Sakura then realized that the situation had actually been Chidose's fault all along, yet she still wondered why Takao remained angry at Roka. Chidose nearly interrupted Takasaki before he could say anything further. Meanwhile, Kanji arrived just in time to see Roka and Takao arguing while pushing each other aside in frustration. He noticed that Roka was holding a towel. Takao questioned whether Roka intended to start trouble, but Roka quickly denied it. Kanji stepped in and gently placed the towel over Takao's hair, realizing that Roka had only wanted to give it to her. He began to suspect that Roka was simply trying to apologize. For Takao, however, an apology was not what she wanted at that moment. She called Roka selfish, saying that Roka had done nothing wrong yet chose to leave the club anyway. Rather than hearing an apology, Takao had actually wished for Roka to stay by her side in the game development club. Kanji found Takao's feelings difficult to fully understand. In the past, when many members left, Takao worked hard to recruit new ones. After finally gathering enough members again, she told Roka about it and invited her to join an upcoming competition. At that time, Roka revealed that she had already formed a new club with Chidose and had even become its president. That news deeply saddened Takao. She questioned why Roka did not simply abandon what she considered an unnecessary club. Roka explained that she could not disband it so easily because she and Chidose had built it together from the beginning. Kanji then asked what Takao planned to do next. Takao firmly declared a challenge. The 2 clubs would compete during the upcoming cultural festival. If Takao's club won, Roka and the members of the so-called fake game development club would merge into her club. Kenji suspected that Takao actually just wanted to be part of Roka's group. Roka then asked for Kenji's opinion, which confused him since he believed he had nothing to do with the matter. Roka reminded him that he was a club member, meaning his opinion mattered. Kenji admitted that he did not fully understand what Roka was aiming for, but he preferred simple solutions rather than complicated ones. Hearing that, Roka accepted Takao's challenge and confidently declared that her club would win. Takao then left, while Roka realized she might have committed to something bigger than she expected. Roka and Kenji returned to the clubroom and explained everything to Chitose. Sakura became excited upon hearing the news, while Chitose considered the situation troublesome. Roka pointed out that if they lost, their club would be absorbed into Takao's club. Hearing this, Minami worried that she might lose her usual resting spot if the clubs merged. That meant their only option was to win. Kenji assumed Roka must already have a solid strategy since she sounded so confident about defeating Takao's club. However, Roka revealed that her only idea was a game concept about a hero trying to stop a Demon King's spatial compression ritual, and she had no additional plans beyond that. After hearing this, Kenji became convinced that their chances of winning were not looking very good. Last year, the original game development club was on the verge of being disbanded. However, Takao worked tirelessly to rebuild it, and the club eventually rose again as a newly revived game development club. Even though its members were still inexperienced, their strong teamwork led to surprisingly good results during competitions. At that time, even students from other schools acknowledged their abilities. Because of that, Chitose became convinced that her own game development club could not defeat Takao's club through normal means, and she believed victory would depend on how much they could disrupt Takao's game production process. Kenji strongly disagreed with that idea. Sakura even suggested pouring water onto the computers in Takao's clubroom, while Chitose considered filling the opponent's CPU with dirt. Kenji could hardly believe the plans they were proposing. Minami also rejected those ideas, saying they were inefficient and time-consuming. She even claimed she had prepared a stun device to settle things quickly, which left Kenji stunned that a teacher could think that way. Roka spoke again in her usual cute manner, but Kenji had already grown tired of hearing it. Kenji wondered why they were not simply focusing on making a game, since they were supposed to be a game development club. To his surprise, none of them actually knew how to create a game. He then asked Roka about her skills and apologized for upsetting her earlier. Roka admitted that she could finish the game Super Marilyn in 1 hour. Kenji was speechless when he realized that Roka only knew how to play games, not create them. Super Marilyn was an action game developed in the 1980s. It was one of the early industry games to feature color visuals and offered unique charm and accessibility that made it popular among both children and adults. Hearing that explanation, Kenji felt it might be better for them to simply accept defeat and join Takao's club instead. However, Chitose insisted they first needed to find out what kind of game their rivals were making, and she asked Kenji to spy on them. Kenji immediately refused, saying he had no interest in doing something so underhanded. Even after Chitose pleaded with him, he still declined, so she proposed that whoever lost a round of Super Marilyn would become the spy. Unfortunately for Kenji, he lost the game and ended up assigned to the task. Kenji was confused when Roka decided to accompany him even though she had won. Roka casually asked why it would be a problem if she came along, and Kenji eventually decided not to argue. They arrived in front of Takao's clubroom. Kenji slowly opened the door while Roka crawled dramatically in front of him, making things more difficult. He told her to leave because she was only getting in the way, but they were suddenly discovered by Takasaki, whom Kenji initially mistook for Takao. Kenji quickly explained that they were only stopping by. Takao seemed surprised that they showed up so confidently after accepting her challenge, yet she invited them inside because she wanted to show them something. Kenji stepped in immediately, but Takao stopped Roka from entering. Inside the room, Kenji was shocked to see Yamada and immediately apologized for hitting him before. Yamada accepted the apology and admitted he had also been at fault. Tsutsumi was surprised to see Kenji there, but said she owed him thanks after he helped her witness Sakura Goka wearing women's clothing earlier. Not long after, Sakura Goka arrived, and Kenji was confused to see him wearing a male uniform. Sakura Goka panicked, worried that Kenji might react harshly after learning the truth, and quickly ran away. Suddenly, Tsutsumi's attitude became unusually friendly, even offering Kenji coffee despite the club not actually having any. Soon after, they began explaining to Kenji how game development worked. Meanwhile, Roka quietly stood near the door. Tsutsumi seemed confident that Kenji would eventually give in to Takao's persuasion, believing no one could stay calm when caught off guard by such close encouragement. However, Yamada pointed out that things would not be so simple. Kanji's messy hair made Takao hesitant, and as long as it stayed that way, she could not even reach his head comfortably. At that moment, Roka suddenly rushed forward and pushed Takao. Startled, Kanji turned around, and the unexpected movement caused an awkward collision that left everyone embarrassed. Takao's face turned bright red, and she reflexively scolded Kanji before quickly asking Roka to leave the room. Not long after, Takao apologized and admitted that the incident was not Kanji's fault. Takao then expressed her hope that Kanji would join her club. In her opinion, competing felt pointless when the outcome already seemed obvious. She also believed that if Kanji joined her team, Roka and the others would stop dragging him into strange situations. Although Takao's reasoning made sense, Kanji remembered Chidosei's words about wanting to help her friends in her own way, especially since she and Roka had worked hard to establish their club together. Kanji ultimately decided that settling things through a fair duel would be more interesting. Takao looked irritated and declared that her club would attract far more visitors than Roka's club. After leaving Takao's clubroom, Kanji realized he had acted far cooler than he actually felt, even though he still had no idea what he was going to do next. Outside, he noticed Roka sitting alone in deep thought. He approached her and invited her to return with him, reminding her that their duel was waiting. When Kanji arrived at the clubroom, he saw Chidosei and the others completely absorbed in playing a game. Roka explained that she had created the game together with Chidosei and had given it a dramatic science fiction title. The story took place during an era of space exploration, when humans interacted with aliens and interplanetary trade had become common. However, there was one type of publication that humans were not allowed to obtain because it carried an extremely high age restriction according to alien standards. Even so, humans remained curious about it. This situation led to the emergence of a secret delivery service that smuggled the restricted items across space, ignoring intergalactic customs and traditions. In the game, players took on the role of couriers tasked with delivering prohibited goods to their destinations while avoiding obstacles. The concept combined a science fiction setting with comedic parody elements. Roka confidently believed that her revolutionary idea would attract players from all over the world. Kanji, however, found it hard to believe that such a grand concept came from what was essentially just a board game. Despite that, Roka remained extremely proud of her creation. From Kanji's perspective, the game's story felt inappropriate for a school festival. Chidosei then asked whether Kanji and Roka had succeeded in causing trouble for Takao's club. Kanji was surprised to learn that this had been Chidosei's intention all along. According to her, their club would never win through honest competition alone, so she had considered using her authority if necessary. Kanji firmly opposed the idea. At that moment, Sakuragaoka rushed into the clubroom, slightly out of breath after changing into a girl's uniform, so Kanji would not grow suspicious of her identity. A few days later, the cultural festival at Fuju High School finally began. A middle-aged man who was an alumnus of the school arrived with his young son, casually describing the event as nothing more than an ordinary festival. Not long afterward, they both sensed an overwhelming energy in the air, causing the boy to question whether the festival was truly ordinary. The powerful atmosphere turned out to come from two game development clubs preparing to compete against each other during the event. The alumnus became convinced that something memorable would happen that year. The two game design clubs faced one another. Although Takao had originally expected Roka's club to sabotage her team's project, she felt relieved that they chose to compete honestly instead. In truth, Chidosei had once planned to interfere with Takao's work, but her friend stopped her before she could act, which surprised Takao greatly. That decision was also the reason Kanji chose to support the opposing side. Tsutsumi explained that whichever team attracted the most visitors would be declared the winner. If Takao's club won, Roka and her friends would have to join Takao's team. When asked what reward Chidosei wanted if her club won, Chidosei impulsively proposed an embarrassing but harmless penalty for Takao, leaving Tsutsumi astonished at how serious their wager had become. Takao herself was confused that such terms had been decided without consulting her. With everything settled, the duel officially began. Kanji believed the situation would only make things more troublesome for Takao, while Takao viewed Kanji as behaving in a shamelessly provocative way. During the festival, visitors lined up to try the games presented by the clubs. Many attendees were curious about Takao's demonstration style, which had gained unexpected attention beforehand. However, it turned out that Takao was not actually in charge of demonstrating the game that day. Soon after, Kanji stopped by to see her. Takao suspected that he had come to interfere, but Kanji was simply there to look around. Not long afterward, Tsutsumi approached Kanji wearing a maid outfit as part of the club's promotional effort, though Kanji felt the costume did not quite suit her. Surprisingly, Sakuragaoka also appeared in a maid uniform, and Kenji complimented her appearance, unaware that Tsutsumi had insisted she wear it. Tsutsumi was willing to try anything to attract more visitors, and even Yamada ended up wearing a maid costume. Takao then invited Kenji to look at the results of her club's hard work. The visitors seemed to genuinely enjoy the game they had created, and Kenji openly acknowledged its quality. Takao interpreted Kenji's reaction as an admission of defeat and believed he was finally willing to help make the club more enjoyable. Kenji admitted that Takao and her teammates had done an impressive job, but he encouraged her to also visit Roka's club and see what they had accomplished. Takao grew irritated by what she saw as Kenji's overly confident attitude. Unexpectedly, Roka's club built an enormous play castle, and a huge number of students lined up to try it. Kenji explained that the attraction was the game their club had created. They had turned an analog game into a large play castle experience, even though it used handmade props instead of digital technology. Takao argued that it should not be called a game, but Kenji stubbornly insisted it was one. Even if it was not made on a computer, the creators had stayed awake for days just to finish the decorations. As Roka often said, anything fun could be called a game. That was exactly why they built the play castle. Takao refused to believe such a massive structure could have been completed by one person alone. It turned out they had used Chidosei's authority to persuade members of the student council and several other students to help. Takao called that unfair, but Chidosei denied the accusation, claiming they were simply using the privileges available to club members. At one point, Chidosei accidentally stepped on Ataru's face during the commotion, and Ataru calmly accepted the situation without complaint. Chidosei then proudly declared that her club had won. Takao protested and demanded a rematch, but Chidosei reminded her that Takao herself had said the winner would be decided by the number of visitors. Takao argued that even though she allowed analog games, the attractions were not entirely original creations. Chidosei immediately pushed back, saying Takao's games were not completely self-made either. Both of them insisted they had built their games from scratch. Unable to argue further, Takao became overwhelmed and started to cry. Chidosei quietly apologized to Takao. In truth, she did not really care about winning or losing. What mattered to her was that Roka did not want to lose her club. Chidosei also apologized for destroying Takao's former club in the past, admitting that she had let her anger control her actions without thinking about the consequences. Kenji realized once again that Chidosei really was a troublesome troublemaker. Chidosei admitted everything had been her fault. Maybe Takao saw Roka's club as ridiculous, but Roka had finally found a place where she truly belonged. Chidosei hoped Takao would not take that place away from her. Takao then asked where Roka was. Chidosei led Takao and Kenji to one of the attractions inside the play castle. There, a middle-aged alumnus of Fuju High School was performing alongside his young son. They were acting out a dramatic father and son showdown as part of a role-playing game. Roka stopped the scene briefly to praise their performance. She was clearly thrilled and happily announced that 4 people had already participated in the theater-style game attraction. Seeing how much fun everyone was having, Takao admitted that the game was genuinely enjoyable. Watching Roka laugh and enjoy herself, Takao finally accepted her club's defeat. In her opinion, Roka's club was simply too unpredictable to deal with. Before Takao left, Roka explained that she could not join Takao's club because she was already the club president. However, she sincerely wanted to become friends with Takao and would gladly welcome her if Takao ever wanted to visit or collaborate with the club. Hearing that, Takao lightly tapped Roka on the head and smiled at her. After the festival ended, Sakura handed Kenji a bottle of water. She admitted she had not expected him to be such a kind person, considering his delinquent reputation. When the campfire event was about to begin, Kenji chose to sit alone on the rooftop instead. Roka came to find him and asked why he was not joining the campfire dance. Kenji said he was not particularly interested in the dancing, but he had truly enjoyed the festival itself. Roka thanked him for joining her club. Kenji assumed she was feeling emotional and teased her by asking her to remove her toy glasses so he could see her expression clearly. The next day at school, Tsutsumi told Takao that they ultimately failed to disband the so-called fake game development club. Takao replied that Roka seemed to be trying her best, so it was fine to let things continue for now. She even thought she might accept it someday if Roka decided to officially change the club's name. Not long after, Chidosei and Roka suddenly appeared in front of them, with Sakura standing just behind. Roka apologized for causing trouble earlier, but Chidosei immediately reminded Takao about the agreed punishment. Takao was confused since Chidosei had already apologized, but Chidosei insisted that rules were still rules and the consequence had to be carried out. Chidosei eagerly prepared to carry out the playful penalty, which made Takao panic. Frightened, Takao shouted as loudly as she could, begging them to cancel the punishment altogether. One day at school, Takao noticed the victory board displayed in front of Roka's clubroom. She felt tempted to mess with it and tried jumping up to reach it. Unexpectedly, Kanji opened the door at that exact moment, startling her. Reflexively, Takao lashed out with her signature claw technique, leaving Kanji in pain. The move was described as a secret technique passed down within the Takao family, supposedly converting momentum into a powerful single strike. According to the exaggerated explanation surrounding it, only members of her family with a certain natural physique could master the technique. The idea sounded ridiculous, and Takao immediately scolded Chidose for saying something so absurd. At that time, Roka was leading a discussion to decide the club's official name. She asked everyone to write their suggestions on the sheets of paper she had prepared. Chidose proposed the name Saturn. Kanji found the suggestion puzzling and wondered whether she was trying to connect it to something from a video game. Chidose even questioned aloud whether the name itself had any gaming relevance. Kanji then realized that Chidose simply had a strange fascination with random themes. Takao rejected the name without hesitation. Next, Sakura suggested the name Dolphin. Kanji commented that it matched Sakura's water-themed personality, though he did not understand why that specific name was chosen. Surprisingly, Takao actually liked the suggestion. Soon after, Minami proposed Electric Station Game Designers Club, but Takao rejected that idea as well. Roka then relied on Kanji to come up with a name. Kanji suggested Second Game Development Club, which everyone initially considered too ordinary. Kanji felt disappointed because he had genuinely thought the name would fit, yet Takao unexpectedly agreed with him. Roka also admitted that the name sounded good. Suddenly, Minami announced that their club name had already been officially decided. Kanji wondered why Minami was so invested in the matter. She explained that she simply wanted to grow closer to everyone. Minami revealed that once the club gained recognition, its official title had been registered as the Temporary Game Development Club. Hearing this, Takao laughed and teased the awkward name, which irritated Chidose. Roka then asked Kanji whether he was truly okay with such a name. Kanji replied that the name suited Roka and the others perfectly. Chidose and Roka became annoyed, feeling as if Kanji was implying their games were low quality. Kanji denied saying that outright, although he admitted the thought had briefly crossed his mind. Not long after, Takao apologized for laughing at both Roka and Kanji before leaving the room. Kanji felt that Takao had not meant any harm, so it should not be a big issue. Roka, however, looked irritated and stared sharply at him before poking him in annoyance. Later that afternoon, Kanji walked home from school with Yokoshima and Hiroshi. Yokoshima asked why Kanji was not spending time with the Game Development Club that day. Kanji explained that he did not need to attend every single day. Hiroshi commented that Kanji seemed to be having a lot more fun lately. Before long, they noticed a group of delinquent students blocking the sidewalk. Kanji told them to move aside so others could pass. Suddenly, Ataru appeared and explained that the group was known as the Orchestra of 14 Evils, a music-themed gang feared by other groups at Fuju High School. Kanji wondered if they were a gang that used instruments as weapons, but Ataru clarified that they were simply troublemakers who spent their time in arcades, often causing problems for students from other schools. Their leader, Odawara, asked Kanji what issue he had with their group. Mayokaku recognized Kanji and mocked him as part of a countryside gang. Kanji replied that the Orchestra of 14 Evils clearly knew nothing about his group. Tension quickly escalated, and a fight broke out. Meanwhile, back at the clubroom, Roka was enthusiastically explaining a chaotic space adventure game concept filled with over-the-top collectible items, designed for 4 players. She and the others invited Takao to try the game, but Takao refused, confused about why she had been tied to a chair in the first place. Shortly afterward, Ataru arrived with urgent news that Kanji had been beaten up and captured by the Orchestra of 14 Evils. Chidose asked whether Ataru had run away on his own. He admitted that he had intentionally left to inform them because he had no intention of getting involved in a street fight himself. Takao insisted that they needed to rescue Kanji immediately, but Roka argued that intervening might hurt Kanji's pride as a delinquent. Frustrated, Takao pushed Roka and told her to stop pretending nothing was wrong, reminding her that she was the club president and should handle situations like this responsibly. Chidose added that Kanji was a guy who should be able to deal with his own problems. Takao then asked what Roka planned to do next, only for Roka to suddenly say she needed to go to the restroom because the earlier collision had made her uncomfortable. Annoyed, Takao urged her to hurry. Roka asked Chidose and Sakura to accompany her, and the 3 of them even said goodbye politely before leaving. Only then did Takao realize they had completely abandoned her. She asked Ataru to untie her, but he simply smiled without helping. At that moment, Kanji finally regained consciousness. As soon as he woke up, he realized his body was tightly tied up and he was inside an abandoned house. Odawara explained that he had awarded Kanji 3 points for daring to challenge the orchestra gang of 14 delinquents. Kanji had never expected that outcome because he originally thought the gang was nothing more than a joke, yet they turned out to be surprisingly capable. He tried to free himself, but the ropes were tied far too tightly. Odawara proudly explained that he and his gang members trained their fingers and hands every day so they could master rhythm games with incredible skill. He believed that one day their gang would dominate Fuju High School. One of the members, Takasaki, announced that he had found something interesting inside Kanji's bag. Kanji quickly told them not to open it, although he then realized there was probably nothing important inside anyway. To everyone's surprise, they discovered a strange board game themed around a fictional sci-fi magazine intended for mature audiences. Kanji himself was shocked, never imagining that Roka had slipped the game into his bag. Meanwhile, Odawara and the others became completely absorbed in wanting to try the board game. Kanji then noticed that Yokoshima and Hiroshi were also being held captive alongside him. Frustrated, Kanji struggled again to break free, but the ropes were incredibly strong, even though it felt like they had a chance to escape. Yokoshima commented that everything happening was because of Kanji's game. Kanji immediately denied ownership, insisting that it actually belonged to Roka. At that moment, Odawara and the others began arguing over who would get to play first. As the gang leader, Odawara believed he should go first, but Takasaki disagreed, saying that a true leader should sometimes give priority to his subordinates. Odawara then pointed out that the game was designed for 4 players, meaning they needed to form groups of 4. Everyone agreed. Odawara carefully calculated that there were 9 of them present, which meant only 2 teams could be formed, and 1 person would inevitably be left out. However, before he could organize anything, the others quickly formed teams on their own, leaving Odawara excluded. He quietly sat in the corner, reflecting on the situation. Kanji could not understand how someone like him had become the gang's leader. The 2 teams prepared to compete with what Takasaki described as a battle of determination. According to him, the team that showed the strongest passion for playing would be considered the winner. As a wager, Takasaki offered a rare photo of Funabori, the winner of that year's Best Partner Candidate contest at the school festival. The photo was said to be extremely rare. Matsubisa admitted that Takasaki's determination seemed strong, but he refused to lose. If Takasaki was wagering the legendary Funabori, then Matsubisa would counter with a rare photo of Takao falling onto a gym mat. Kanji was surprised to learn just how famous Takao apparently was. The others immediately accepted the wager, treating the photo like a priceless treasure. Yokoshima then asked what Kanji was thinking about. Kanji simply assumed that Roka would probably be delighted if she saw everyone fighting over her game. Meanwhile, Odawara realized that if things continued this way, he would remain stuck in the corner until everyone else finished playing. He suddenly decided to join Kanji's group instead, surprising everyone. Kanji told him that he really should not rely on his help. Odawara clarified that he was not asking for help, but he did want Kanji to join in and have fun together. Kanji found it strange that a gang leader like Odawara was not stopping the pointless argument. In response, Odawara suddenly smashed the board game, shocking everyone present. He scolded his friends for fighting over something so trivial. Although he also wanted to play, he believed it was far more important for everyone to stop arguing and make peace with each other. The group was deeply moved when they saw Odawara crying. Together, they apologized for upsetting him earlier. Odawara felt relieved seeing everything return to normal. Suddenly, Odawara fell over after being pushed by Kanji. Everyone was shocked, wondering if Kanji had somehow broken free from the ropes using pure strength. They demanded to know why he did it, but Kanji himself did not understand his own actions. The gang then rushed toward him and scolded him loudly. Kanji felt as if he had briefly lost control of himself. Out of nowhere, Shidosei's voice was heard suggesting that Kanji should be buried as punishment. Sakura's voice followed, proposing that he should be tossed into the swimming pool, while Roka's voice added another exaggerated suggestion about covering his head with a sack. Moments later, everyone was startled by the sudden arrival of Roka and her friends. Roka casually claimed that they were just a group of girls who had gotten lost while looking for the restroom. Odawara's friends quickly recognized Shidosei and Takao. Odawara assumed that Kanji had brought the girls there, but Kanji denied it immediately. However, Shidosei and the others jokingly confirmed the assumption. Odawara then teased Kanji, calling him a playboy since 4 girls had shown up to rescue him. Takasaki and Mayokaku looked disappointed, realizing that even with 14 members in their gang, none of them had a girlfriend. Odawara truly never expected that Shidosei, the student council president, would be Kanji's crush. Shidosei looked annoyed when she was labeled that way, while Sakura simply laughed it off. Meanwhile, Roka casually claimed that she and Kenji shared a bond that could never be broken, though Odawara was convinced she was just making things up. He then began to suspect that Kenji might actually be dating Takao. Takao's face turned red as she quickly denied having any kind of relationship with Kenji, yet Odawara only grew more suspicious. Odawara and the others became increasingly curious about what kind of connection all these girls had with Kenji. In perfect sync, they explained that Kenji was simply their teammate in the game development club. Chidose wanted to settle the situation as quickly as possible. Odawara interpreted their eagerness as impatience to start a fight. According to Takasaki, this was their chance to defeat the student council president and take control of Fuju High School's leadership. Odawara hesitated at the idea of confronting girls, but Takasaki convinced him that anyone who wanted to rule had to act decisively and without hesitation. Suddenly, Odawara remembered how he always reached a game over at the same section of a rhythm game he used to play. At that moment, Kamigawa had taken over and explained that playing together was an art form, even if the game became easier with 2 players. He believed that if every team worked together like that, taking control of the school would be simple. Fired up by the realization, Odawara loudly declared his intention to conquer the school, and his followers enthusiastically prepared themselves to challenge the girls. Kenji tried to stop them, urging everyone not to turn the situation into a reckless brawl. The clash began quickly. Kodama was immediately knocked down by Chidose. Hajime and Mayokaku launched a coordinated Super Twin Dragon attack, but Chidose skillfully avoided their moves. Their loud shouting only irritated her, and she countered with a dramatic door-based attack that defeated them both in a single strike. At the same time, Sakura calmly poured water over her hands. Takasaki wondered what water had to do with her technique. Sakura explained that she felt uncomfortable touching people she did not know well, and the water was meant to sanitize her hands. Her explanation struck Takasaki emotionally and left him momentarily speechless. Kenji asked Takao to quickly untie him, and she remarked that the entire situation had started because Kenji had acted like a delinquent. Kenji thanked her for helping him anyway. At that moment, Roka stared sharply at Kenji. Matsuhisa and the others targeted Roka, assuming she was the weakest member. However, in an instant, Roka covered their heads with sacks and defeated them effortlessly. She then approached Odawara, who immediately became frightened. Kenji stepped in to stop her, declaring that the fight was already over. It became clear that Roka tended to lose herself when she entered serious mode. Odawara suddenly realized that Roka was likely the person who had once stopped the conflict between Chidose and the former student council president. He finally understood that she was rumored to be the school's secret boss, a mysterious and overwhelmingly powerful figure. Kenji also came to a realization. Roka was actually the strongest person at school and the very individual he had been searching for all along. Roka, however, insisted that she did not care about titles like secret boss and asked Kenji not to dwell on it. Seeing an opening while Roka seemed distracted, Odawara thought he could defeat her and attempted to strike. Kenji immediately stepped in to protect her and struck Odawara instead for daring to attack his club president. Roka thanked Kenji, and he responded that it was the least he could do since he owed her. After everything settled down, Roka invited Kenji and the others to play her game. Kenji was surprised to discover that there was already a 3rd volume, only to learn that Roka had been developing it every single day. Roka wondered why Kenji seemed so irritated by that fact. Meanwhile, Yokoshima and Hiroshi were still nearby, and Yokoshima silently hoped that Kenji would stay strong, since his real challenges were only just beginning. Joe appeared as a character inside the board game created by Roka's club. In the game's story, Joe worked as a hunter searching for adult magazines in outer space. During one mission, he was attacked by a melon monster, but fortunately Mr. Kids arrived and helped him. Joe had never expected help from Mr. Kids, since he considered him a rival. However, Mr. Kids simply did not want his rival to be defeated there. Joe promised that one day he would repay the favor, yet Mr. Kids instead asked Joe to hand over all the adult magazines he had just collected. Joe happily agreed. Roka then gave 5,000 points to Chidose. At that moment, Chidose was playing as Mr. Kids and held adult magazines worth 48,000 points. She explained that the game allowed players to steal cards from one another. Roka added that doing so prevented players from sending enemies back to the starting position, but it was still the fastest way to gain more cards. The 3 of them continued playing while explaining the rules to Kenji, though he still did not understand anything. Chidose grew annoyed and stepped on Kenji's foot in frustration. Earlier, Kenji had wanted to repay them for saving him from the Orchestra of 14 Evils, yet when they only asked him to join their space-themed battle board game, his attitude toward them turned unpleasant. Kanji complained that the game felt excessive, which upset Chidose because she was the one who designed it. Takao wondered why Roka's club room was so noisy and asked everyone to calm down. Kanji was surprised to see her there. Takao explained that her own club did not have a meeting that day, so she decided to supervise Roka's club to make sure it behaved like a proper school club. Chidose confidently assumed that Takao probably did not have many friends since her club consisted only of underclassmen. Roka concluded that Takao actually wanted to play with them, though Takao immediately denied any interest. Suddenly, Roka asked Kanji to persuade Takao to join their game. Kanji was confused about why he had to be the one to do it. Then Kanji realized something. The Space Battle board game was originally designed for only 4 players. If Takao joined, there would be one extra person, putting Kanji in a situation similar to what Odawara once experienced. Kanji asked Takao to take his place in the game and consider it as helping someone in trouble. Takao replied that she had already helped Kanji when he was captured by the Orchestra of 14 Evils. Kanji insisted that this was different and said that if she helped him again, he would truly owe her and would even agree to do anything she asked. Surprisingly, Takao accepted, though she warned that her request later would be demanding. Roka celebrated Kanji's success and said they could now play together as 5 players. Kanji was shocked and pointed out that the game was supposed to be limited to 4 people. Roka casually explained that she was always updating and developing the game. When Kanji looked toward Takao, she stated that she had no intention of canceling their agreement. Kanji felt frustrated and declared that he would see things through properly as a man of his word. Chidose found that statement strange since Kanji had been the one pushing so hard earlier. Roka told everyone to quickly choose their characters. Only 2 characters remained, Gandhi the monk and Provender, a comedic troublemaker character. Chidose was surprised that their new characters were not popular, especially since alien characters were quite rare. Roka then added the character Joe into the selection pool, and the 3 of them decided to play rock, paper, scissors to determine who would get which character. Chidose wondered why Roka did not simply keep Joe, since she was closely associated with that character, but Roka said she was just happy to play her own game together with others. Chidose and Sakura felt touched by Roka's kindness. Kanji, meanwhile, questioned why they did not just assign the characters directly instead of competing for them. The game of rock, paper, scissors began. Roka lost the first round but declared they would play best out of 3. She claimed she had already gone easy on them and asked everyone to follow her instructions. Kanji and Takao were both determined not to lose to Roka. Takao won the second round and felt confident she could secure Gandhi. She briefly wondered whether she might end up with Joe instead, but Roka clearly had no intention of losing to Kanji. Kanji believed he would win the next round, especially since Roka had consistently chosen rock before. Unexpectedly, during the following round, Roka raised her thumb instead. Kanji was confused about what that gesture meant. Roka explained that it signaled a timeout, a rule officially listed by the Game Development Club, allowing her to pause the game for 2 minutes. Kanji asked what they were supposed to do during a timeout. Chidose explained that a timeout at a moment like that could be terrifying because, within 2 minutes, Roka could easily weaken her opponent's confidence and determination. Takao began to feel that the situation had drifted far away from a simple game of rock, paper, scissors. Roka immediately launched her level 1 intimidation attack, known as the Intimidating Goose. Without hesitation, she jabbed at Kanji's face with her hand, then repeatedly poked Takao's chest in an attempt to shake her confidence, even though it clearly did nothing to change Takao's composure. About 2 minutes later, they returned to playing rock, paper, scissors. Unexpectedly, both Kanji and Takao called for a timeout. Roka became convinced that whatever came next would put her at a disadvantage against the 2 of them. Instead of continuing the game, Takao used the break to ask several personal questions, while Kanji took the opportunity to remind Takao about a favor she supposedly owed him. The conversation quickly turned into another argument, forcing Roka to step in and calm them down. Kanji suggested that the problem might be resolved if Roka simply gave up. Roka was shocked to realize that her authority as club president seemed to carry very little weight. Takao even clarified that Roka was only the game leader of the temporary game development club. Determined to end things, Roka decided she would finish the game in the next round. They started another round of rock, paper, scissors, and Roka suddenly raised her thumb and pinky finger together. Kanji had no idea what the gesture meant. Roka explained that the signal meant the game was postponed until the next meeting. Since it was already getting dark, she also announced that the club activities would end for the day. She quickly grabbed her bag and headed out of the clubroom. Before leaving, she asked Chidose to add a new character type, specifically a human-type character, before their next meeting. Kanji complained that Roka was playing unfairly. The next day during lunch break, Kanji overheard his classmates talking about the Kazama gang defeating the 14 Evils Orchestra. He assumed the gang's reputation had improved after the incident, but then he suddenly heard someone say that the Kazama gang had become errand runners for the student council president. Kanji immediately scolded them and was about to explain the truth about Chidose when Roka and Chidose suddenly appeared and invited him to have lunch together. It turned out Kanji's classmates already knew about the student council president and even about Roka being the so-called secret boss. Kanji was surprised to see that Roka had apparently intimidated them earlier using her goose technique. Confused, he asked why they had come to his classroom. Roka assumed Kanji would have trouble using chopsticks because his left hand had been injured during a previous fight. At that moment, Takao looked visibly irritated. Kanji clarified that he was not left-handed, so he could still eat normally using his right hand. Roka and Chidose then sat at Kanji's desk before briefly leaving to pick up their lunches. Roka was surprised to discover that Kanji had brought a homemade lunch even though he had a reputation as a delinquent. Chidose explained that Kanji's younger sister prepared his lunch every day. Kanji's classmates were amazed, wondering what kind of delinquent received homemade lunches from his little sister. Kanji added that his sister insisted it was more economical for him to bring food from home. Curious, Roka immediately inspected the contents of the lunchbox. Everyone seemed relieved to find that the meal looked completely normal and not overly decorative or unusual. Kanji grew annoyed because he had tried to keep it hidden from others. Chidose even knew which class Kanji's sister belonged to. She revealed that her notebook contained detailed information about many students' embarrassing moments. The notebook originally belonged to Ataru, and now everything that had belonged to him was under Chidose's possession. Meanwhile, Roka and the others casually began eating Kanji's lunch. Kanji's friends jokingly asked if they could borrow his sister as well, which only made the situation more awkward. Roka offered to share her own lunch with Kanji, but he refused and told her to head back soon because the bell would ring any moment. Chidose found it strange that someone with Kanji's delinquent image was so diligent about attending class. Kanji explained that the next lesson was classical Japanese taught by Mr. Sean, a teacher he deeply respected and considered his personal savior. Chidose was puzzled because that information was not written in her notes. Kanji explained that everyone in the Kazama gang already knew about the incident from the past, and if they were willing to listen, he would tell the story. Roka and the others immediately became interested, prompting Kanji to begin his story, unaware that Takao was quietly listening from behind the classroom door. The story began when Ataru and his friends pressured Kanji into going up to the rooftop of a supermarket to watch a performance. Not long after they got there, the building suddenly caught fire. Kanji blamed Ataru and insisted that he take responsibility, since he had been the one who invited everyone to climb up in the first place. Yokoshima suggested that they climb down from the terrace, but the drop was far too high. Ataru claimed that he had seen a girl climb down from there earlier and walk away unharmed. Kanji was convinced that whoever that was could not possibly have been a normal human, and probably was not even a woman. Yokoshima believed that his soft body might cushion the fall if he jumped, but Kanji immediately rejected that idea as unrealistic. Hiroshi felt confident that his tall build would allow him to climb down safely, though Kanji doubted that plan as well. Ataru even mentioned that he had recently been enduring a lot of pain and believed he could handle the jump. Meanwhile, the superhero Raygarger proudly claimed that he could break rocks with his bare hands and leap as high as 20 meters, so he felt certain he would survive the fall without a problem. Just as the situation became more desperate, Sean suddenly appeared to rescue them. He instructed everyone to climb down using a rope. The group felt deeply grateful, but Sean told them that their thanks should go to an amazing woman who had informed him that children were still trapped on the rooftop. Everyone hurried down except Kanji, who hesitated because he did not want to feel indebted to an adult he did not know. Sean approached him and encouraged him to help others in need someday, just as Sean had helped him. Kanji eventually agreed. Sean expressed his belief that Kanji would grow into a great man one day. That was the story of how Sean saved Kanji and his friends, and by coincidence, Kanji later met Sean again at school. His classmates were deeply moved after hearing the story. Chidose commented that the experience had shaped Kanji's personality, which only made him more irritated. Roka still could not believe that the person inside the Raygarger hero costume turned out to be a middle-aged man. Kanji himself was surprised by everyone's reactions after telling the story, and his frustration grew even more when he realized that Roka and the others had finished eating his lunch. Roka apologized and offered to replace it with her own meal, only to realize that she had already eaten hers earlier as a snack. Chidose then tried to feed Kanji, but the food slipped and fell onto the floor. She picked it up and attempted to offer it to him again, though Kanji refused to eat something he considered unhygienic. Shidose was shocked that Kanji called it disgusting, especially since the lunch had been made by Funabori. She immediately called Funabori over, and Kenji suddenly realized that the girl he had seen in the photo before was actually his classmate. Shidose began reading Funabori's profile from her notebook. Funabori was described as skilled at household tasks, kind, friendly, and caring. She often arrived early to clean the classroom, water the flowers, and replace any that had wilted. Everyone agreed that Funabori was an amazing girl, which made Kenji's earlier reaction seem even worse. The classmates finally understood and began thanking her enthusiastically, cheering her name so loudly that Funabori became confused by the sudden attention. Feeling pressured, Kanji ate the fallen food and admitted that it tasted good. Shidose then pointed out that it was already lunchtime, meaning many students had been walking across the classroom floor since morning. The others casually admitted that they had also stepped around the area where the food had fallen, which only made Kanji more upset. Soon, the bell rang. Shidose, Roka, and Ataru quickly returned to their respective classes, leaving Kanji sitting quietly, disappointed that he still had not properly eaten lunch. A moment later, Funabori came back and brought him some extra food. However, several classmates immediately wanted some as well. Around that time, Sean entered Kanji's classroom. But after noticing Kanji, he returned to the teacher's office to retrieve his worksheets and asked the students to study independently for 5 minutes. Shinozaki and Ohori suspected that Sean had done this intentionally so Kanji could finally finish his lunch peacefully. Later that afternoon in the school hallway, Takao gave Kanji a yakisoba bread, believing he must still be hungry after missing lunch. Kanji initially tried to refuse, but eventually accepted it. Sean then appeared again and apologized for interrupting them. He encouraged the students to enjoy their youth while they could. Kanji and Takao felt deeply impressed and inspired by him. That day, Kanji's class had just finished the lesson taught by Sean. After class ended, Kanji planned to skip the rest of the day, but before he could leave, Roka suddenly approached him. Kanji tried to run away, yet Roka quickly caught up to him. She hid behind Kanji and explained that her enemy was coming. Kanji was surprised to learn that there was actually someone at school whom Roka feared. Roka positioned herself behind Kanji, using him as a shield. Kanji could not understand why she chose to hide behind him, especially since he had no idea what kind of person her enemy was. Roka described this person as someone she was deeply afraid of, someone who could catch up to her instantly no matter how fast she ran. Moments later, Roka suddenly disappeared, leaving Kanji even more curious about who the supposed enemy might be. Not long after, a boy named Hachi walked through the school corridor. Students greeted him warmly with smiles as he passed by. Kanji wondered if this was truly the person Roka had been talking about. As Hachi walked past Kanji, he mentioned that he could sense Roka's presence nearby. Hachi then approached Kanji and asked Roka to come out of hiding. Unfortunately for him, by the time he got close, Roka had already run away again. Hachi explained to Kanji that chasing Roka was his responsibility. Suddenly, Roka came rushing back and bumped into them, insisting that Kanji should be the one chasing her instead. Hachi tried to persuade Roka to come with him, but she insisted that she wanted the freedom to do whatever she liked. Hachi laughed at her innocent attitude, finding it charming. He attempted to catch her, while Roka tried her best to avoid him. At that moment, Funabori suddenly appeared and startled Kanji. She had approached them after accidentally overhearing their conversation. Kanji asked whether she knew Hachi, and Funabori explained that Hachi was something of a celebrity at their school. He was the successor of the Shu Group, a large company involved in many industries. His personality, appearance, and family background made him extremely popular among the girls. Hachi had been absent from school for a while because he was gaining work experience at his father's company, and according to Funabori, he was completely captivated by Roka. Kanji wondered if someone like Hachi was Funabori's type, but she quickly denied it. She then added that Hachi was also temporarily a member of the game development club. Kanji was shocked to learn that Hachi belonged to the same club as him. Hachi introduced himself to Kanji and asked how long Kanji had known Roka. Kanji explained that he had only known her for about 2 months, while Hachi had known her since their first year of high school. Hachi then recalled the story of how he first met Roka. After the school entrance ceremony, Hachi had been walking around carrying gifts he received from several girls. At that time, he noticed Roka holding a handmade bag. Seeing her cheerful expression, he approached her and admired the bag, assuming it was meant for sports clothes. He was impressed that she had made it herself. However, Roka explained that she did not actually plan to use it. Hearing that, Hachi asked if he could have the bag and use it as a lunch bag, believing that handmade items would make their creators happy when someone appreciated and used them. Roka became annoyed and immediately pulled the bag over Kenji's head instead. Ever since that moment, Hachi had become completely fascinated with her. Kenji realized that Hachi's personality was somewhat similar to Ataru's. Surprisingly, Hachi still carried that same bag with him, even though its shape was now completely worn out. Haki declared that he would not lose to Kenji when it came to winning Roka's attention. Roka mentioned that she had done the same thing to Kenji before, which shocked Haki and led him to excitedly conclude that the three of them were involved in a love triangle. Kenji could hardly understand how the situation had turned into something like that, while Hachi seemed overly thrilled by the idea. Meanwhile, Roka clearly tried to keep her distance from him. Kenji separated the two of them, causing Roka to nearly lose her balance. Hachi quickly moved to catch her, but Roka accidentally stepped on him instead, causing her to bump lightly into the wall. Kenji apologized, realizing he might have pushed her a bit too hard. Annoyed, Roka once again pulled the bag over Kenji's head, marking the second time she had treated him that way. Unexpectedly, Hachi became extremely eager to wear the bag himself. With intense enthusiasm, he approached Kenji and snatched it away. Funaburi could only watch in confusion, while Kenji shouted for Hachi to stop what he was doing. That afternoon, inside the temporary game development club room, Roka and Haki were pushing a bookshelf back and forth, while Sakura watched them with obvious excitement. Kenji had no idea what they were doing, so he asked Chidose, but she answered casually without giving a clear explanation. It turned out they were competing to see who was stronger by pushing the bookshelf with sheer force. Minami, whose nap had been interrupted by the noise, looked annoyed. Not long after, Roka managed to knock Haki back, and Chidose immediately recorded Roka's victory over Hachi, with an exaggerated score of 82-0. Afterward, everyone gathered and sat together again. Only one seat remained, so Kenji decided it would be better for him to leave. Suddenly, Hachi called him back and asked him to take the empty seat. Kenji wondered where Hachi would sit, only to learn that Hachi had always squeezed himself between the bookshelves ever since he joined the club. Chidose found it strange how close Kenji and Hachi seemed and asked whether they already knew each other. Hachi claimed that he and Kenji were so close that they even shared Roka's bag together. Kenji became irritated by Hachi's misunderstanding. Chidose reacted with visible disgust at their supposed closeness. Haki then challenged Kenji to a game duel. Hearing this, Roka became even more convinced they were competing for her sake, especially after Hachi declared that the duel was meant to decide ownership of Roka's bag. Kenji did not particularly care about the bag itself, but he was interested in the challenge. He suddenly began searching for the bag he had set aside earlier. Not long after, Funaburi arrived carrying the bag. She had already washed and ironed it carefully. Kenji was genuinely impressed, thinking she truly lived up to her reputation as an ideal girl. Hachi was surprised that Kenji had prepared everything for their duel, admitting that Kenji was impressive, although he personally preferred the bag the way it was before being cleaned. Hearing that, Funaburi apologized, saying she should not have washed it. Kenji quickly reassured her that she had done nothing wrong. The two prepared to begin their duel, but Roka suddenly looked upset because they had discussed competing over her belongings without involving her. She insisted on joining the duel as well. Feeling disturbed by the commotion, Minami left for the teacher's office. Sakura also left, saying she wanted to head to the pool, and Chidose even attempted to climb out the window before being stopped. Eventually, Chidose and Funaburi joined in and knelt in front of Roka. Roka asked what game they were going to play. Hachi argued that the duel would lose its meaning if Roka participated since the match was supposed to determine ownership of her bag. Kenji, however, did not mind at all. He actually wanted to compete against Roka directly. Everyone knew Roka was considered the strongest person at school, and since Kenji would never settle things through physical confrontation with a girl, a game duel felt like the perfect way to challenge her. Kenji confidently believed he would win the bag, while Roka was equally certain she would take it back. Chidose suggested turning the match into an open tournament instead, though Kenji initially objected. Chidose teased him, suggesting he was afraid because his chances of winning would shrink with more competitors. She implied he simply did not want to lose, which provoked Kenji into agreeing. Roka stated calmly that defeating one opponent or 100 made no difference to her. Hachi realized that the more participants joined, the smaller his chance of facing Roka directly would become, and he declared that he would defeat anyone who stood in his way except her. Unexpectedly, Takao suddenly appeared and announced that she wanted to join the tournament as well. The next day, Tsutsumi and Chidose acted as hosts for the tournament. Chidose encouraged everyone to give their absolute best during the competition. It turned out there were 48 participants, which surprised Kenji because the number felt excessive. Tsutsumi began introducing the contestants one by one. First was Paitra, representing Morami, the ramen shop owner. Next came Fujiseki, a man said to live his life on 50-50 chances. Then there was Moro from the orchestra of 14 villains, who had come seeking redemption for his friends. Akasaka appeared without any nickname, followed by Mainohama, known for living in a house filled with numerous cats and dogs. Ori represented the 24 nocturnal bald group. Tanjin claimed to be bald himself, and Fukako and Yokoshima, nicknamed Littlefoot, were introduced among several other participants. Finally, the last 4 contestants were the tournament organizers themselves: Hachi, known for a smile that easily charmed girls; Roka, the secret boss; Kenji from the recently popular Kazama gang; and Takao, the game development club president. At that moment, Takao stood silently. Earlier, Kenji had admitted that he did not actually want Roka's bag very much, which embarrassed Takao because she had openly said she wanted it. Tsutsumi was confused when she noticed Takao starting to cry. Shidose speculated that Takao might be dealing with something that had dampened her spirit. She then made blunt observations about Takao's confident appearance and presence, though her comments clearly came from frustration rather than admiration. Both Chidose and Tsutsumi insisted they were not jealous of her at all. Takao quickly pulled up her zipper, struggling for a moment before finally managing to close it. Everyone cheered when she succeeded in zipping up her jacket. Shidose could hardly believe how unexpectedly chaotic the day had turned out and secretly wished the event would end soon. Takao then asked for Kenji's opinion, but Kenji thought it would actually be better if she loosened the zipper again. Takao immediately called him inappropriate. Kenji explained that he only said that because he was worried about her comfort, and hearing that made Takao's face turn bright red. Kenji then scolded Tsutsumi, who had been dragging things out with lengthy explanations. Tsutsumi announced that the grand prize of the tournament was Roka's pouch. Everyone fell silent in confusion upon hearing it. Shidose clarified that the pouch was not ordinary because it had been carefully washed and ironed by Funaburi. Once the participants heard that, they burst into excited cheers. Even Kenji was surprised that so many people were interested in the prize. Nakasu and Kawabata from the Bald Nocturnal group were also eager to participate. Kenji urged everyone to start the tournament immediately. The tournament finally began. Tsutsumi picked a rolled piece of paper containing the name of the first game, which would eliminate weaker participants. Unexpectedly, the words written on the paper sounded embarrassing when read aloud, causing her face to flush with embarrassment. Shidose quickly explained that the phrase was simply an abbreviation describing a pushing game involving boxing motions, kicking, stepping, and shoving techniques. The objective of the game was to force opponents out of the ring. Tsutsumi blew her whistle to signal the start, and anyone who remained inside the ring would advance to the next round. The participants immediately began pushing against one another to knock their opponents out. Roka focused on avoiding the chaos, while Hachi tried to move away from someone who suddenly bumped into him. Moro showed impressive strength as he pushed back several opponents at once. Moromi then asked whether Moro believed he could defeat him. Moro felt confident, but Moromi jokingly hinted that Moro might not receive his usual generous serving of chashu pork at the shop if he continued. Hearing that playful threat, Moro decided to step out of the ring on his own. Moromi later made another humorous remark about thinner slices of chashu when Ohori collided with him. However, Ohori felt there was something far more urgent to worry about: Roka's powerful swan technique. Both of them panicked and accidentally fell out of the ring. Meanwhile, Takao looked nervous as she watched people pushing each other around her. Fujiseki declared that he would push Takao because his compass supposedly guided him to do so. He began moving toward her enthusiastically, describing his actions in an overly dramatic way that annoyed both Tsutsumi and Chidose. Fortunately, Kenji reacted quickly and kicked Fujiseki out of the ring, then warned Takao that she should step out if she truly did not want to compete. Suddenly, Takao pushed Kenji instead, admitting that she did not want him to win the tournament. Kenji was confused by her statement. At that exact moment, the zipper pull on Takao's jacket snapped off and flew forward, accidentally hitting Kenji in the eye and causing him to fall. The crowd erupted in cheers at the unexpected turn of events, jokingly describing it as a perfectly timed accident. Shidose and Tsutsumi felt both frustrated and amazed, reluctantly admitting that Takao seemed to operate on an entirely different level from everyone else. Takao quickly tried to help Kenji regain his senses. Not long afterward, the whistle blew, signaling the end of the first round. All participants who were still inside the ring earned the right to move on to the next stage. Takao herself was shocked to realize that she had successfully remained in the ring. The tournament games were still ongoing, and the remaining participants felt confident that each of them would ultimately win. At that moment, Kenji finally regained consciousness after fainting. When he opened his eyes, he saw Hachi standing in front of him, firmly holding his hand. Hachi looked genuinely relieved and showed clear concern for him. Kanji was startled and asked Hachi to let go, but Hachi's grip remained surprisingly strong. Funaburi felt relieved to see that Kanji had woken up. She immediately asked whether he still felt anything unusual in his body. Kanji noticed her appearance looked rather unusual, and Funaburi explained that she had been assigned to the first aid team. Tsutsumi had given her the outfit while she was treating him, and Sakuragoka had been wearing the same uniform as well. Kanji wondered why Funaburi was the one taking care of him. Funaburi then explained what had happened earlier. Takao's zipper had accidentally come loose and struck Kanji on the forehead, causing him to collapse. Hearing this made Kanji finally remember the incident, and he declared that he would never forgive Takao. However, Funaburi clarified that Takao had not meant to hurt him and had felt extremely sorry about the accident. In fact, Takao had also helped take care of him afterward. Kanji found that surprising because he had always thought Takao was clumsy. Funaburi admitted that she had applied most of the bandages because Takao struggled to do it properly, although Takao had insisted on finishing the treatment herself. From Kenji's perspective, Takao had both injured him and been responsible for finishing him off in the match. Kanji thanked Funaburi for helping him and then questioned why Hachi was still holding his hand. Funaburi explained that, while Kanji was unconscious, the tournament had already advanced to the semifinal round. Kenji's next opponent was Hachi, and their match would be decided through a thumb wrestling contest. Kanji could not believe he had been placed in the semifinals without competing like everyone else. Hachi explained that the tournament had continued while Kanji was unconscious. Kanji wondered why he had been treated so generously, and it turned out that all the remaining participants had agreed to it. One participant had suggested giving Kanji a bye since he was still unconscious. Shinkiba said he had no objection. Usaki understood because Kanji's condition resulted from an accident, and Azuma even praised Kanji as a courageous man for protecting Takao from Fujisaki earlier. Shinano added that Takao's zipper incident had been unexpectedly impactful, so it made sense for Kanji to rest until he recovered. Uemachi raised no complaints at all, while Tanazu and Ayer said it would have been troublesome if Kanji had withdrawn at that point, and they wanted the chance to face him fairly. Takao felt deeply grateful toward everyone who showed understanding toward Kanji. Shiba and Shinagawa also said they had no issue with the decision, although they jokingly remarked that they would not go easy on Kanji once he recovered. Everyone had shown great kindness, but unfortunately none of them made it to the semifinals, leaving their hopes resting on Kanji. Kanji then asked how the other semifinal match was going. At that moment, the semifinal between Roka and Takao was still underway, and both of them looked completely exhausted. They had already collided many times, yet neither of them had fallen. Kanji grew curious about what kind of game they were even playing. It turned out to be musical chairs, although they had completely ignored the chairs and instead turned the match into a test of strength. Funaburi explained that Roka and Takao had initially followed the normal musical chairs rules, but over time the competition had transformed into a pure strength duel. Roka pushed forward using her head, and Takao pushed back just as fiercely. The two continued competing with unwavering determination, and neither showed signs of giving up. Kanji wondered whether their intense determination had made them lose sight of the original rules. Haki then invited Kanji to begin their semifinal match. The rules were simple. Whoever managed to pin the opponent's thumb down for 10 seconds would be declared the winner. They immediately started their thumb wrestling match. At the same time, Takao and Roka collided once again in their own battle. Kanji and Haki took turns attempting to hold each other's thumbs down. Kanji soon became annoyed because the audience barely paid attention to their match. He complained to the announcer, asking for commentary on their battle as well. Tsutsumi casually remarked that Kanji and Haki's match seemed rather dull because they were strictly following the rules. That comment only made Kanji more determined to win. Hachi also remained focused on claiming victory in the tournament, just as Takao firmly believed that she would become the champion. Funaburi then asked Kanji which opponent he actually hoped to face in the finals, Roka or Takao. Kanji found the question strange because, in his mind, he would obviously face whoever won the semifinal. Funaburi wondered whether he truly did not care who his opponent would be. Kanji answered that he wanted to face the stronger competitor because defeating the strongest opponent was the only way to be recognized as a true champion. He admitted that he had once wanted to face Roka specifically, but that desire would mean nothing if he failed to win his semifinal match first. Takao and Roka secretly overheard the conversation. Roka grew increasingly irritated because earlier Kanji had not even cared about her bag, and he also showed no interest in who won the semifinal round, even though he had once been eager to face her in a duel. To Roka, it felt as if Kanji had insulted her. The atmosphere around her turned intense, making everyone nearby uneasy. The wind around the arena began to blow strongly, and Chidose became convinced that Roka was completely serious this time. Chidose then told Takao to step aside, warning that something bad might happen if she continued to face Roka. Tsutsumi asked what Chidose meant by something bad. Chidose explained that the pressure from Roka's energy could become overwhelming and might even cause Takao's clothes to tear or create a powerful shock around her. Unfortunately, Takao insisted on facing Roka because she refused to lose to her in that match. She braced herself, ready to endure whatever impact might come from Roka's charge. Roka ran straight toward Takao, but unexpectedly, she aimed for a chair near Takao instead and quickly sat down on it. Everyone was shocked and accused Roka of cheating, even though that move was actually the correct way to win their semifinal match. Seeing Roka declared the winner made Hachi even more motivated to win his own semifinal and prepare for the finals, so he focused on finishing his match against Kanji. Without realizing it, Hachi had already had his thumb pressed down by Kanji for 10 seconds, securing Kanji's victory. Tsutsumi complained that Kanji's win felt unfair because he acted while Hachi's attention was elsewhere. As a result, both finalists advanced in rather questionable ways. Tsutsumi then picked a paper roll to determine the game for the final round, and the selected game turned out to be the King's Game, even though only 2 contestants remained. At that moment, both Roka and Kanji looked extremely excited to settle the final match. That afternoon, an alumnus father from Fuju High School walked with his young son near the campus. They sensed an intimidating aura coming from the school grounds. The boy guessed that the energy likely came from a female student with an exceptionally high level of power. The father felt deeply moved because his son could sense such strength, which meant the boy had already surpassed him. Meanwhile, the tournament's final round was about to begin. The participants would play the King's Game. In this game, several wooden sticks marked with numbers were prepared, and one stick was labeled as the king. Whoever drew the king became the ruler, while the others became subjects who had to follow the king's commands. However, since only 2 players remained, the rules were modified so that whoever picked the king's stick would immediately be declared the winner. Roka and Kanji both appeared highly determined to win the tournament. Kanji cracked his fingers confidently, while Roka clenched a ball of rice in her hand as if she were gripping an opponent. Yamada, who was responsible for holding the sticks, looked nervous. Kanji reassured him to relax, reminding him that they were only playing the King's Game. He suggested that Yamada crouch slightly so he would not feel pressured, adding that it might also make it easier for the shorter Roka to reach the sticks. Even so, Roka believed that Kanji probably wanted a chance to peek at the contents of the sticks. Chidose then asked Tsutsumi who she thought would win the match. Tsutsumi replied that the outcome would depend purely on luck. At that moment, Tsutsumi noticed Roka accidentally dropping something, which turned out to be an angel silver charm. Roka explained that she had received it as a bonus after buying something the previous day. Their friends realized that Roka truly seemed lucky and began to worry about Kanji. Kanji told everyone not to worry about him, arguing that Roka had already used up her luck the day before, meaning her good fortune must have run out by now. Chidose was surprised at how confidently Kanji turned the situation around. Roka responded that only people who frequently experience bad luck believed in the idea of luck running out, and she felt that such a concept did not apply to her. Kanji did not deny her statement and instead began sharing a story from his life during a New Year celebration. During the New Year holiday, Kanji walked with his younger sister toward a nearby shrine. Along the way, he came across a New Year's gift envelope labeled as a present from a grandfather to his granddaughter, Tama, containing 10,000 yen. Hearing the story, Roka commented that Kanji must be an incredibly lucky person. Kanji continued explaining that he believed Tama was probably worried after losing such a large amount of money. Since he had been with his younger sister at the time, he decided to turn the envelope in to the police. Tsutsumi felt deeply moved and described Kanji as the ideal older brother. Chidose admitted she never expected such honesty from someone with Kanji's delinquent reputation. According to the rules, if no one claimed the lost item within 6 months, the finder would be allowed to keep it. However, even after 6 months had passed, Kanji still insisted that the money did not belong to him. His friends were stunned by his decision. To them, it was almost as if Kanji refused to acknowledge ever finding the money at all. Chidose jokingly remarked that Kanji had already used up his share of luck earlier. Everyone quietly hoped that Tama would eventually come to the police station to reclaim her money. At that moment, a tense atmosphere surrounded Roka and Kanji, making Yamada uncomfortable enough that he could barely stand near them. Roka picked up one of the wooden sticks and declared that Kanji was the toughest opponent she had ever faced. Kanji responded by saying he felt the same way about her. Roka then asked what Kanji planned to do with her pouch if he won the tournament. Kanji realized he had not even thought about it yet. He answered that he would keep it carefully as proof that he had defeated her. Roka smiled, though she admitted his answer was not what she had expected. Kanji interpreted her question as a sign that she had already accepted defeat, but Roka's intense gaze immediately made him nervous. Their friends noticed that her words had put Kanji under pressure. Tsutsumi reminded them that dismissal time was approaching and urged both of them to grab their wooden sticks quickly. Roka and Kanji struggled against each other, each trying to control a stick. Kanji declared that he would not rely on luck alone, because luck by itself would never make him a king. He pushed forward, sending both sticks flying into the air, then announced that the winner would be whoever caught the king's stick first. Tsutsumi and the others were shocked by his sudden move, while Chitose warned Roka not to fall for his tactic. Roka attempted to strike toward Kanji's head, but he swiftly dodged. Kanji dashed toward Yamada, used him as a stepping point, and leaped into the air to grab the stick. Everyone watched in amazement at his agility. After landing, Kanji proudly showed the king's stick to Roka. Seeing this, Tsutsumi immediately declared Kanji the winner, and their friends erupted in cheers. Kanji approached Roka, prompting her to ask why he came closer. He admitted he was simply curious about her expression after losing. Roka accused him of fighting unfairly, and Kanji asked whether that meant she accepted her defeat. Roka acknowledged her loss, especially since she had been the one who challenged him in the first place. She added that she was glad Kanji intended to keep her pouch, and said she would have been disappointed if he refused to do so. Before leaving, Roka mentioned that next time she wanted them to compete in a game that did not depend on luck. She then tossed the stick she had caught, revealing that it was actually a broken piece of the king's stick. Kanji realized that their abilities were evenly matched. Roka walked away with a gentle smile on her face. At that moment, Hachi praised Kanji's performance and, for the time being, allowed him to keep Roka's pouch. Kanji wondered whether Hachi had finally given up. Instead, Hachi firmly shook Kanji's hand and explained that the two of them were still rivals, both in matters of romance and in competing over Roka's pouch. Kanji immediately felt uneasy and tried to pull his hand free from Hachi's strong handshake. That day, Kanji and Takao were summoned to the disciplinary guidance room, where Minami and two other teachers held a formal meeting for them. Minami asked whether they understood why they had been called in. Kanji assumed it was because of the commotion they caused the previous day, but his guess turned out to be wrong. The real reason was the incident involving Takao's jacket zipper, which had suddenly snapped open and struck Kanji. Both of them were shocked that such an event had become a serious issue. Minami explained that several teachers and parents had begun questioning the durability of the school sports jackets. Kanji felt the concern sounded unreasonable, but Minami emphasized that student safety had to come first whenever complaints were received. Takao realized the situation was entirely her responsibility. The damage happened because she insisted on wearing a jacket that was already too tight for her. To Kanji's surprise, Tama had apparently mentioned this detail openly in front of the teachers. Takao apologized and admitted that she had previously blamed growth changes to hide the fact that the jacket no longer fit her properly. Kanji found it strange that Takao described it that way, which made him wonder if she truly understood why the zipper failed in the first place. Minami asked both of them to remain calm. Although Takao and Kanji had started the original incident, there was another reason the problem had grown larger. Other students had begun copying what became known as the Boeing zipper incident. Hearing this, Kanji and Takao were stunned. Minami added that the number of students affected kept increasing. The first reported cases involved Ohori and Moromi. Minami questioned why they had deliberately put themselves at risk by recreating the zipper stunt. Moromi explained that he thought imitating it would make him feel as bold as Takao. Ohori shared an exaggerated comparison about the sensation of strong wind while moving at high speed, though both admitted they ended up being scolded at home for damaging their sports jackets. The two even argued with each other afterward, each trying to shift the blame. Minami then mentioned a more serious case involving a second-year student named Sajanuma. After witnessing Takao's zipper incident, Sajanuma attempted to imitate it out of misplaced confidence. The attempt failed and embarrassed him greatly, causing him to lose motivation and stop attending school for a while. Kanji believed the situation resulted from Sajanuma's own decision, especially since the jacket itself had not actually been defective. Takao wondered if she should apologize to Sajanuma, but Kanji felt that doing so might only worsen the situation. Minami explained that many similar cases had appeared and asked everyone present for their opinions. Instead, Kanji asked for Minami's perspective, since she was always seen wearing a student sports jacket. Ori became convinced there must be a story behind it, prompting Minami to share her past. When Minami was still a temporary teacher, she struggled to adjust to arriving at school early each morning. Commuting alone from Hachioji felt difficult for her, even though the distance was not especially far. Around that time, a student named Tatsuka noticed that Minami often arrived late and looked exhausted. Minami barely remembered Tatsuka's face, but when graduation day came, he achieved excellent results. Before leaving school, he gave his sports jacket to Minami. Because her own clothes were often worn out, Tatsuka hoped she would continue using the jacket, saying it might even be happier if it was worn until it finally gave out from years of use. That was how Minami obtained the sports jacket, and she had managed to keep it in good condition ever since. The story moved one of the teachers beside her to tears. While looking at the jacket more closely, Minami then realized that its original owner before Tatsuka had actually been Nobuhito. Takao was also deeply touched by the story and tearfully suggested that Minami could take her sports jacket after graduation someday. Minami declined, explaining that Takao's size would not suit her, and the other teachers gently refused as well. Takao sincerely apologized to everyone for the trouble she had caused. Kenji concluded that the zipper incident was an unusual accident rather than anyone's fault. In his opinion, there was no need to replace the sports jackets at all. Minami herself had proven how durable they were, and the jackets clearly lasted a long time, so the matter did not need to be exaggerated further. Minami agreed but reminded Takao to avoid repeating the zipper incident in the future. Takao promised she would be more careful, especially since she had already bought a larger jacket. Kenji felt relieved that the issue was finally resolved. Takao admitted she regretted causing so many problems, but Kenji reassured her that she had unfairly become the center of attention and should not blame herself too much. Before returning to class, Takao asked whether Kenji had any plans for the weekend. She felt the situation would not have been resolved without his help, so she wanted to treat him as a gesture of appreciation. Takao and Kenji met up over the weekend. Kenji asked if it was true that Takao was going to treat him to food or movie tickets, but he felt confused about why the two of them had to wait in line at that particular place. Earlier that day, Takao had dressed in a more feminine outfit than usual, which surprised her mother. Takao's older sister was also puzzled, since Takao normally preferred wearing simple t-shirts or jackets. Takao's mother quickly understood the reason behind her daughter's appearance. She believed it had something to do with the video game Takao had been eagerly waiting for, which was scheduled to release that very day. Takao suddenly realized the date matched the game's launch and immediately panicked, leaving her eldest sister even more confused by her reaction. Takao apologized to Kenji because their plans had ended up falling apart. Kenji calmly told her that if she had really wanted to go somewhere else, she could have told him earlier and they could have rescheduled for another day. For Takao, gathering the courage to invite Kenji out again would not be easy. Kenji decided he might as well head home and suggested that Takao could simply buy him something from the school cafeteria later instead. Before Kenji left, Takao reminded him that he owed her a favor from when they had played a fighting game together. She asked him to stay with her until the game shop opened, saying that once he did, his debt would be fully repaid. Kenji agreed, especially since he had already come all the way to meet her. He then asked what kind of game Takao was so excited to buy, and Takao's face immediately lit up with happiness when she heard the question. The game Takao loved most was Magic Village. The first Magic Village game had been released in 1987, and its sequels had continued to be produced ever since. The action fantasy game, which represented Japan's classic game era, told the story of Mason, a royal wizard trying to rescue Queen Ashin after she was kidnapped by a demon king. The gameplay was fairly challenging, and the graphics had remained mostly unchanged for nearly 10 years, giving longtime fans a nostalgic feeling reminiscent of legendary retro titles. Takao enthusiastically explained every detail about Magic Village. Kenji then realized that Takao was the president of the game development club at school, which made perfect sense considering how passionate she was about games. Takao did not hesitate to share the franchise's history either. The original 1987 release had been a huge success in the gaming industry, and the following titles sold extremely well. However, many of the original staff members were later recruited by other companies, causing the series to lose direction for a while. Several releases afterward failed to meet expectations. The game being sold that day, however, was the newest installment, developed by reunited staff members and expected to become a masterpiece. The latest version featured dramatically improved graphics, although Takao personally still loved the older visual style. Kenji eventually noticed that many people in line were dressed as characters from the game. Takao explained that the shop was very famous. She chose that location because it was close to her house, and the store also offered exclusive accessories at affordable prices. One item she especially wanted was a phone charm featuring Mason riding Engar the dolphin. Takao could hardly wait to buy it, and Kenji found himself hoping the store would open soon as well. Suddenly, Kenji noticed a tent set up at the very front of the line, which reminded him of someone he knew. Takao mentioned that the same person always set up a tent there, though she had never learned who it was. Kenji found it strange that Takao had never realized the person's identity, but it turned out she usually fell asleep while waiting in line before the shop even opened. As Kenji had suspected, the person inside the tent was Roka. Takao was shocked when she saw her, her face turning red with embarrassment as if she were afraid of being discovered. Takao quickly asked Kenji to hide with her. Kenji wondered why it would matter if Roka saw them together, but Takao worried that Roka might misunderstand the situation. At that moment, Roka began walking toward them, making Takao even more nervous. Takao suggested they borrow a costume from the person standing next to them as a disguise. When Roka approached, she suddenly stopped and sensed that the person wearing a mason costume might actually be Kenji. Kenji changed his voice and insisted she had mistaken him for someone else, but Roka remained certain. She claimed she could recognize Kenji's presence nearby, and no voice change could fool her intuition. With no other choice, Kenji admitted the truth. Roka became deeply moved upon seeing Kenji waiting in line at the game shop while dressed as Mason. Kenji explained that he had worn the costume of his own accord. Meanwhile, Takao hid behind him, believing it was a perfect hiding spot. Although the space felt hot and uncomfortable, she quietly felt apologetic toward the middle-aged man who actually owned the costume. Seeing a half-dressed man standing beside Kenji, Roka concluded that he must be portraying Mason after a battle scene in which the character's cloak had been damaged. The man seemed impressed that Roka understood the concept so quickly. Kenji then asked Roka to return to her place in line. Roka happily admitted that she was glad to meet Kenji there and requested that he demonstrate Mason's fire archer pose before she went back. Kenji looked completely confused. He did not even know what Mason's fire archer move looked like, and he had no intention of performing it. Suddenly, the middle-aged man wearing the Mason costume stood up and invited Kenji to perform Mason's fire archer pose together. Kenji felt confused about why the man suddenly joined in, especially since the Mason robe did not cover the legs. If Kenji stood up, Takao would immediately be exposed. Takao quickly searched for a solution and asked Kenji to stand on the count of 3. Without warning, she started counting and Kenji instantly stood up. His face turned bright red as Takao's chest pressed tightly against his back. Takao apologized, worried that her weight might be uncomfortable, but Kenji said it was not a problem. Still, he felt tense because of how close they were. Takao's face also flushed deeply as Kenji's hair brushed against her face. The man in the Mason costume began performing the fire archer movement, and even the person standing next to Kenji followed along. Kenji quickly copied the pose as well, which moved Roka emotionally. She became extremely excited and started telling everyone around her. After that, she asked Kenji to perform the cold freeze move, but Kenji refused and told Roka they should leave right away. Roka then asked whether Kenji was still taking care of her pouch. Kenji was surprised she brought it up at that moment. Roka admitted that she had been too embarrassed to ask about it back in the clubroom. Kenji explained that he simply did not know what to do with the pouch, so he had been carrying it in his bag the whole time. Roka did not mind and soon left. Kenji mentioned that he had not seen Roka use her fire element in a long time. Hearing that, Roka's expression suddenly turned flat and slightly intimidating. Once the situation felt safe, Takao quickly climbed down, and Kenji took off the Mason costume, which felt hot and smelled unpleasant after being worn for so long. Kenji grew puzzled when he noticed Takao standing silently. She admitted that she was not feeling well, but when Kenji tried to check on her condition, she suddenly ran off instead. Everyone nearby turned to look at Kenji, leaving him feeling embarrassed. Not long after, the store finally opened. At that moment, Takao stopped in front of a vending machine because she had been holding back nausea for a while. She then realized how badly she had left Kenji alone earlier. Takao felt disappointed in herself and did not know what she should do next. She thought that if she returned, Kenji might already be gone. It would probably be difficult to meet him tomorrow, and she had not even managed to buy the game she wanted. Suddenly, Kenji appeared carrying the game, surprising her. He immediately handed it over, leaving Takao confused about why he bought it for her. It turned out that once the store opened, the people waiting in line allowed Kenji to purchase the game first so he could go after Takao. Kenji himself did not fully understand why they insisted. Kenji then asked why Takao had run away so suddenly if she was feeling sick. Takao sincerely apologized for all the trouble she had caused that day. Kenji could not understand why she felt so guilty and simply asked whether she was feeling better now. He then jokingly asked Takao to buy him some food because he was extremely hungry. Takao smiled and agreed. The two of them went to a cafe to eat together. After they finished their meal, Takao told Kenji that all of her money had already been spent on the game earlier. During lunch break, Yokoshima introduced himself as the dump truck and bulldozer of the Kazama gang. Hiroshi then described himself as someone whose height was above the average Japanese standard, while Ataru introduced himself as the student council vice president and the strategist of the Kazama gang. Kanji felt confused about why the three of them suddenly started introducing themselves during lunch. Suddenly, Hachi arrived and introduced himself as Kenji's partner in the temporary game development club. Kanji finally realized that his three friends had actually been introducing themselves to Hachi. Hachi immediately stood in front of them, which irritated Kanji. Ataru laughed and commented that Kenji's clubmate seemed like a fun person. Kanji quickly denied that claim and insisted that Hachi was not his friend. Hachi felt slightly hurt by the remark, but they eventually continued eating lunch together. Hachi then asked whether Kenji had left his bag in the classroom and admitted that he was worried about Roka's pouch inside it. Kanji was surprised that Hachi even knew the pouch was in his bag. It turned out that Roka had told him earlier. Hachi felt relieved, believing that meant Kanji was still taking good care of the pouch. Not long after, Hachi excused himself, which made Kanji suspicious. Kanji assumed that Hachi was only interested in Roka's pouch. Hachi asked Kanji to trust him, explaining that he no longer had any claim over the pouch after losing the previous tournament. Because of that, he believed it should be fine for him to at least look inside the bag containing it. Ataru allowed Hachi to join their lunch, but did not appreciate seeing Kanji bothered. Soon, Ataru also became curious about the bag and wanted to check it first himself. Kanji could not believe their behavior. Hiroshi commented that it would probably be impossible for Hachi and Ataru to fit their heads into Kanji's bag because it would feel too cramped. Surprisingly, both of them insisted that the tighter the space felt, the more satisfying it would be. The two immediately rushed toward the classroom to look for Kanji's bag. At that time, Funaburi and her friends were enjoying lunch in the classroom. They were startled when Kenji, Hachi, and Ataru suddenly burst in, creating a commotion. Kanji urgently asked Funaburi to protect his bag, saying that its fate was now in her hands. Funaburi looked tense after hearing that. Hachi and Ataru began competing to grab the bag. Funaburi quickly held onto it, while Kanji begged her not to hand it over to either of them. She lifted the bag high into the air as the three boys struggled to reach it. Her face turned red, and she looked close to tears from the pressure of the situation. Kanji restrained Hachi and Ataru, then asked Funaburi to throw the bag out the window. Instead, she scolded him, saying that he should take better care of his belongings. Kanji then asked her to hide the bag, but Funaburi did not know where to hide it. She briefly considered hiding it somewhere difficult for the boys to reach, then immediately dismissed the idea and shook her head. Realizing it was not a good solution, Kanji wondered why she suddenly shook her head. After hearing Kanji mention the word head, Funaburi suddenly decided to put her own head inside Kenji's bag to keep it safe. She felt uncomfortable inside the bag and thought it might hurt if someone pulled it away, but she trusted that Hachi and Ataru would not harm her. Hachi and Ataru praised Funaburi, jokingly calling her the winner of their cramped space challenge. Both Kenji and Funaburi were shocked to hear that. One day, Noe stood in front of the temporary game development club room, still unable to believe that her older brother had joined the club. At that moment, Roka and Takao were walking toward Roka's clubroom. Suddenly, Shidose became annoyed and loudly demanded to know who had been peeking into her clubroom the whole time. Noe was startled. Everyone looked confused upon seeing her, and Roka gently pushed her inside the clubroom. They quickly invited Noe to sit down and offered her tea and snacks. Noe sat politely and enjoyed the tea that had been prepared. Shidose noticed that the girl was a first-year student and felt like she had seen her somewhere before. Noe realized that Chidose was the student council president, just as her classmate Ogawa had said. According to Ogawa, Chidose was an extraordinary person. Noe wondered why Chidose was inside the clubroom. Chidose felt that the girl's hair looked familiar, so she carefully touched it and was surprised to discover that it felt unusually sharp. Roka asked whether Noe was a first-year student because she looked small and adorable. When Roka tried to pat her hair, her hand hurt slightly due to its sharp texture. Sakura even felt chills just from watching the interaction. Sakura mentioned that the girl's hair color seemed to be inherited, and Chidose also noticed that the color matched perfectly. Takao did not understand what they were talking about at all. Roka then placed Takao's hand on the girl's hair, which surprised her immediately. Chidose explained that the girl was Noe. Takao truly had no idea and could hardly believe it, since Kenji had never mentioned anything about this before. Chidose wondered why Takao was getting involved in someone else's personal life, while Noe also asked what kind of relationship Takao had with Kenji. Feeling annoyed, Noe scolded everyone for touching her hair non-stop. She admitted that her messy hair had always made her feel insecure. She found it strange because, compared to her own hair, Sakura's hair actually looked even messier, so technically Sakura could also be mistaken for Noe. Sakura casually brushed her hair and said she would not mind being recognized as Noe. Noe stared in confusion as Sakura calmly fixed her hair and called it bed hair. At that moment, Noe realized that Sakura truly was extraordinary, just like Ogawa had told her. Even though they were both first-year students, Noe began to suspect that the club was a gathering place for unusually talented people, and she found it odd that her older brother had ended up joining such a group. Not long after, Roka asked what Noe liked. Instead, Sakura suddenly wondered if Noe might like Kenji. Noe quickly denied it, and, while stumbling over her words, said that she liked ice cream. Hearing that, Roka asked whether Noe's element was ice. Noe had no idea what Roka meant. Sakura became excited and explained that water and ice elements were practically siblings. Noe still could not understand what Sakura was talking about. Sakura then asked whether Noe liked water, Shidose asked whether she liked earth, and Roka asked whether she liked fire. Noe replied that of course she liked all of them, because life would be difficult without water, earth, and fire. Takao then asked whether she liked games. At that point, Noe began to feel uncomfortable in the room and wanted to leave the club as soon as possible. Soon after, Takao's phone rang, and Tsutsumi was calling her. Roka suddenly noticed a keychain featuring Mason the Witch riding a dolphin from the game Witch Village. The item was a limited edition sold only at the virtual game shop Poi and created by the store manager. Roka mentioned that she had waited in line at that shop and asked whether Takao had also been there, since she had even seen Kenji there. Takao immediately grew nervous, worried that everyone might discover the truth. Shidose asked Noe whether Kenji was the type of person who would line up early in the morning at a store. Noe firmly denied it. Roka, however, found that strange because she clearly remembered seeing Kenji there dressed as Mason and even demonstrating a fire archer pose. Noe insisted that there was no way Kenji would ever do something like that. Takao became increasingly anxious and thought that she needed to protect Kenji's reputation. If she told the truth, it might lead to misunderstandings. Reluctantly, Takao claimed that she had ordered Kenji to buy the game for her. Noe was shocked to hear that. Shidose assumed that Kenji must have owed Takao a favor, which explained why Takao treated him like an assistant, and Takao admitted it. Shidose then asked whether Takao had also told him to cosplay, while Roka wondered if Takao had instructed him to perform the fire archer act as well. Takao had no choice but to agree and emphasize that Kenji had only been following her orders. Takao believed that this explanation would allow Noe to continue respecting Kenji, but instead, Noe began to look frightened of Takao. She wondered who Takao really was and how Kenji could obey her so completely. Noe recalled Ogawa mentioning that a girl in the game development club named Takao was incredibly impressive. Seeing Takao up close made Noe even more intimidated. Nervously, Noe asked Takao to keep some distance, but in her panic, she accidentally bumped into Takao, which embarrassed Takao. Startled, Takao reflexively pushed her away, causing Noe to fall along with two novels that dropped beside her. Takao immediately apologized. Noe suddenly burst into tears and called out for her older brother, exclaiming dramatically that Takao had knocked her down. She quickly ran out of the club room. Takao looked confused, insisting that she had pushed Noe with her hands, not anything else. That afternoon, Noe approached Kenji and mentioned that she had stopped by the temporary game development club room. Kenji did not say much afterward, but he quietly bought her the most expensive ice cream at the supermarket. The next day, Noe planned to return the lunchbox Kenji had accidentally left behind. While walking through the corridor, she unexpectedly ran into Takao. The two of them immediately felt awkward because of what had happened before. Takao was about to apologize, but Noe suddenly knelt first and apologized to her instead. She never expected to run into Takao that day, especially someone she saw as incredibly impressive. Takao felt that Noe had completely misunderstood her and quickly asked her to stand up. Noe repeatedly apologized and admitted that she had never intended to touch Takao inappropriately. When Noe almost started describing the incident out loud, Takao quickly covered her mouth so no one nearby would overhear. At that moment, Noe felt extremely nervous around Takao and wondered why she had to run into her again, even blaming Kenji for somehow being the cause of it all. As the conversation continued, Noe realized that Takao actually seemed quite cute, and she nearly found herself staring at her without meaning to. Wanting to escape the awkward situation, Noe tried to leave, but Takao instead invited her to have lunch together. Confused, Noe asked why Takao wanted to eat with her. Takao explained that she simply wanted to be friends now that their misunderstanding had been cleared up, assuring her that she had no hidden intentions. Noe became suspicious because Takao looked unusually flustered. She even worried about what Takao might do next. Noe declined the invitation, saying she needed to deliver Kenji's lunchbox, secretly relieved to finally have an excuse to leave. However, with a slightly red face, Takao suggested inviting Kenji to join them for lunch instead. Noe immediately assumed Takao might start bossing Kenji around again. Feeling embarrassed about having lunch with her older brother and realizing her own lunchbox was still in her classroom, Noe hesitated. Takao then offered to deliver Kenji's lunch herself, since her classroom was right next to his. Hearing this made Noe anxious, imagining Takao teasing Kenji too harshly, and she began to panic because she did not know what to do. At that moment, Roka happened to pass by and told Takao to stop scaring Noe. Takao insisted she was not doing anything wrong, but Roka noticed how frightened Noe looked and accused Takao anyway, even calling her Takao Thunder. Some nearby students jokingly imagined Takao dressed like a flashy fantasy mage, which only added to the awkward atmosphere. Takao reassured both Noe and Roka that she only wanted to deliver the lunch Kenji had forgotten. Hearing this, Roka offered to handle it instead since she was in the same class as Kenji, and Noe quickly agreed. Roka reached for the lunchbox, but Takao grabbed it back, and the two ended up arguing over who should deliver it. During the struggle, Roka accidentally pushed Takao, causing the lunchbox to bounce away after hitting Takao and flying across the hallway. The unexpected scene left everyone nearby stunned. Both Roka and Takao immediately felt guilty for ruining Kenji's lunch. Noe said it was not a big deal and even felt relieved that the situation was finally over. Takao wanted to give Kenji her own lunch as a replacement, but she had not brought one that day. Instead, she offered some homemade cookies she had prepared earlier. This made Noe start to wonder if Takao might actually be a kind person. Roka, however, thought cookies alone would not be filling enough, so she decided to add a special lunch prepared by her younger sister. The three of them hurried to deliver the food to Kenji. Kenji was confused about why his younger sister arrived together with Takao and Roka, but before he could ask anything, they quickly ran off. When Kenji opened the lunchbox, he found a note inside that read that someone cared deeply about their older sibling. His classmates immediately teased him, joking that he must act like an older sister at home, which Kenji firmly denied. Meanwhile, Shidose felt puzzled when she noticed Noe hanging out with Takao and Roka in the temporary game development club room as well. One day, the members of the temporary game development club were playing poker with Takao. Kenji looked pleased with the cards he had received, but Shidose and Roka were both convinced that they would be the ones to win. Sakura asked everyone to reveal their cards. Kenji had a straight flush. Sakura had a master flush. Shidose had a Mr. Kid's flush, and Roka had a Joe flush. Kenji was confused because those kinds of cards were not supposed to exist in poker, but apparently that was simply how poker worked in the game development club. According to Roka, to make things fair, Kenji's hand should have been something like a Gandhi flush or a lavender flush. It turned out that having 5 cards with matching character images could defeat any normal combination or sequence. Kenji finally understood why his deck had felt unusually thick from the start. Takao then wondered about her own cards, which consisted entirely of characters taken from over-the-top magazine stories. Surprisingly, the cards still formed a valid sequence. Sakura admitted that she had never seen anything like it before and thought the cards looked impressive. Kenji could only wonder how many character cards they had actually added into the deck. Shidose then told Kenji to buy drinks for everyone since he had lost the poker game. With no real choice, Kenji left to fulfill their orders, still puzzled about why they could never play a normal game properly. As soon as Kenji stepped out of the club room, someone suddenly grabbed him and slammed him to the floor. Not long after, Ataru rushed into the game development club room with urgent news, saying that something serious had happened. He explained that Kenji had been kidnapped. Shidose and the others were surprised that something like this had happened again, and Shidose even joked that Kenji's elemental trait must be Princess Pinch. Roka and Takao looked genuinely worried about Kenji's condition. Shidose suggested they leave him alone for the moment because she assumed Kenji had probably caused trouble again. However, Ataru insisted that this time it was not Kenji's fault. Ataru showed them a text message claiming that Kenji was being held captive and asking Shidose to come to a certain classroom immediately. The message was sent by Tama and included a photo of Kenji tied up. Shidose recognized Tama as a third-year student known for her intimidating reputation. Sakura wondered whether something had happened before that made Tama bold enough to challenge Shidose directly. Shidose admitted she did not know what would happen, but she decided they should meet the sender anyway. At that moment, Hachi, who had been hiding near a locker, quietly expressed interest in going along. Meanwhile, Tama and her friends were watching over Kenji, who was still unconscious. One of Tama's friends guessed that Tama might have thrown him a little too hard earlier. Tama was known for being fearless with anyone, and Kanji appeared more shocked than physically hurt. When Kanji finally woke up, he angrily demanded to know who they were and why they had attacked him so suddenly. He continued protesting and demanded to be released. Tama was surprised that Kanji did not recognize them, so she introduced herself along with her friends Azuma, Naganuma, and Shinsen. Kanji realized they were all third-year students and wondered why they had captured him. Tama explained that Kanji seemed like an easy target and that she intended to use him as bait to lure the temporary game development club members. Kanji could not understand why he had been turned into a hostage. As Tama was about to explain further, Shinsen stated that they had unfinished business with the game development club. Shinsen asked whether Kanji truly did not remember her. Kanji tried to recall anything about Shinsen, but could not remember at all. It turned out that she had been one of the participants in a previous tournament, secretly operating inside the Ire robot, something Kanji had never realized. Azuma mentioned that she had watched the tournament from the audience and had been sitting next to Funaburi. Hearing that annoyed Shinsen, who complained that Azuma got to watch comfortably while she had to hide inside a robot after being ordered by Tama to spy. A short while later, Tama checked Kanji's phone and found a message from Ataru saying that starting that day, Shidose had given Kanji the nickname Princess Pinch. Azuma commented that the nickname sounded cute. With Chidose and the others expected to arrive soon, Shinsen confidently declared that she could face them alone. She immediately left the classroom. Kanji briefly worried about her safety, which confused Shinsen because he was technically her opponent. In Shinsen's view, fighting as a group would only tarnish her pride. She was completely confident in winning because she believed she possessed a secret weapon. Naganuma and Azuma were not entirely sure that Shinsen could win on her own. Kanji wondered why they did not try to stop her. Tama felt even more confused, questioning why Kanji seemed worried about someone who was technically their opponent. According to Tama, Shinsen hated being underestimated by underclassmen. Not long after, they saw Shinsen enter Ire. Seeing this, Tama and the others began to think that Shinsen might actually be able to defeat Shidose and her friends. Meanwhile, Shidose and the others pretended to sweep the hallway so they could quietly make their way to the third-year classrooms without drawing attention. It turned out that the third-year students who strongly disliked Chidose were former members of the student council. Tama had once served as the student council president, Naganuma as vice president, Azuma as treasurer, and Shinsen as secretary. Rumors said that even teachers preferred not to get involved with them. Takao wondered how Chidose had ended up on bad terms with such a group. Shidose explained that things had been that way since they were kids. Roka added that they were not truly enemies. The situation had grown out of misunderstandings and small problems that kept piling up over time. Even so, Shidose jokingly hoped they would graduate soon and struggle to find jobs afterward. Takao found it strange that Chidose attended the same high school as people she disliked so much, but Chidose simply said she chose Fuju High School because it was the closest one to her home. Suddenly, Ataru and Hachi were knocked down by an attack from the Ire robot. Ire was a secret machine that had been passed down through generations within the Science Club. It turned out that Tanazu, the Science Club president, had secretly cooperated with Tama. Hachi questioned why Tanazu would do such a thing, and Tanazu apologized, admitting that he owed Tama a personal debt. Ire announced that the temporary game development club was already approaching game over. Shidose was certain that the person nicknamed Hook was inside the robot. Hook was actually Shinsen's nickname, which she received after becoming sick during a stage event long ago, with Tama being the first person to call her that. Inside the robot, Shinsen shouted in frustration while Tanazu warned her not to move too much because it could damage the machine. Roka, Chidose, and Sakura prepared to break through. Takao did not understand what they were planning. The three of them combined their strength and repeatedly struck the Ire robot. The impacts made Shinsen, who was inside, feel extremely dizzy. Tanazu grew increasingly worried about Ire's condition. Ataru told him to hand over the remote control if he wanted to save the robot. They struggled over the controller until Tanazu suddenly gathered his strength and secured it. His eyes flickered with determination, showing that he had become completely serious. Tanazu pressed a button on the remote, activating Ire's ultimate special move, a powerful spinning attack. The robot spun rapidly, making Shinsen even more disoriented inside. Shidose told Roka and Sakura that they did not need to defeat Ire, they only needed to get past it. The three of them successfully slipped by, leaving Takao behind. Roka urged Takao to hurry because the spinning motion was dangerous. Takao carefully moved along the wall. Shidose warned her not to stick her chest out while walking like that. In the process, Takao accidentally dropped her phone. When her Mason keychain was about to be crushed by ire, she quickly struck the robot with her hand. The hit dented ire and caused it to collapse onto the floor. Inside the robot, Shinsen became overwhelmed and threw up from dizziness. Everyone was shocked, while Tanazu panicked over the condition of his robot. At that moment, Tama and Kanji realized that Shinsen had likely been defeated. Tama prepared to face Chidose and the others, but before that, she thanked Kanji for returning the 10,000 yen to the police. The money turned out to be a precious gift from her grandfather. Kanji finally realized that Tama, whom he had mistaken for a child, was actually his upperclassman. Not long afterward, Chidose and her friends arrived to rescue Princess Pinch. Tama and Chidose locked eyes, and the atmosphere instantly turned tense. They greeted each other and acted as if it had been ages since they last met, even though they had only seen each other the day before in the cafeteria. Tama was still upset because Chidose and Roka had dared to line up in front of her there, something she considered a serious offense. Kanji found it strange that such a small incident had turned into such a big issue for both of them. Chidose and Tama stepped forward, ready to start a confrontation. Chidose launched an attack by throwing dirt, but Tama easily dodged it, causing the dirt to fly toward Azuma instead. Roka prepared to use her signature bag-based move, yet Tama skillfully blocked it using her twin ponytails. Everyone watching was amazed by Tama's unexpected ability. Moving quickly, Tama managed to grab Roka and restrain her. Kenji grew curious about who Tama really was. Shinsen then arrived and explained that she had recognized the defensive technique against Roka's bag attack. Ever since Tama had once been hit by that move, she had started tying her hair into twin ponytails every day as a countermeasure. Takao and the others checked on Shinsen, assuming the earlier incident must have been an unpleasant memory for her. Shinsen recalled a flashback from their grade school study tour. During the trip, she had felt sick and started crying. At first, their teacher thought she was experiencing motion sickness, but it turned out Shinsen felt nauseous because Tama had been performing an exaggerated kabuki-style act. When Tama demonstrated it again by dramatically spinning her hair, Shinsen became overwhelmed once more. The teacher immediately told Tama not to perform kabuki in front of Shinsen again. Tama agreed and symbolically sealed the act by tying her hair into twin ponytails. Unexpectedly, that created what Shinsen described as a double kabuki, which made her feel sick again just from seeing it. Because of that experience, Shinsen claimed ownership of the defensive technique against the bag attack. Azuma also remembered the incident and realized how much time had passed since then. Naganuma added that Tama, Shinsen, and Azuma had been childhood friends, though Kanji showed little interest in that detail. Tama clarified that she did not wear her hair that way to look cuter. Previously, she had intentionally left her hair loose. Chidose demanded that Tama release Roka immediately. Tama questioned why she should, since Roka had started the confrontation first, not someone she mockingly referred to with a princess nickname. Kanji quickly asked everyone to stop using that nickname because he disliked it. Tama then revealed the real issue. She had grown fed up with the temporary game development club. After stepping down as student council president, she felt that Chidose had taken advantage of the situation by forming the club. During the school festival, Tama believed Chidose had pushed student council members to work far too hard. Tama did not want people to forget her leadership because of what she saw as Chidose's overbearing actions. For that reason, she intended to use her authority as the former student council president to teach Chidose a lesson. Chidose doubted Tama could actually pull that off. Tama then asked Takao, the official game development club president, for her opinion about the existence of the temporary club. Takao became nervous but admitted that having rivals actually motivated her more. Tama could not understand why Takao was defending them. Kanji stepped in and asked Tama not to drag outsiders into their conflict. He refused to let the club be disbanded for unclear reasons and declared that he and the club members would face Tama directly. Kanji proposed that they settle everything with a game, putting the club's future on the line, but insisted that the temporary game development club members would choose the game themselves. Tama accepted the challenge. Right after that, Chidose kicked Kanji in frustration for making such a huge decision on his own, especially since their club could be dissolved if they lost. From her perspective, Kanji had simply played along with Tama's demands. Kanji, however, did not regret it because he could no longer tolerate Tama's bossy attitude. He wondered whether Tama's words had not angered Chidose as well, and Chidose admitted that she was indeed upset. Sakura also disliked Tama's behavior, and Hachi promised to do whatever it took to ensure their club would be recognized. Roka asked her friends to bring a chaotic sci-fi themed fighting game magazine from the clubroom, adjusting the request so it remained appropriate for everyone present. Kanji prepared himself for the upcoming match, and the rising determination on both sides made the situation feel even more intense. Tama found it surprising that Kanji could actually look cool under pressure. Roka thought that Kanji could appear impressive when he tried, even if people still teased him with that unwanted nickname. Tama agreed to the match but suggested limiting each team to 3 or 4 players to keep things fair. During team selection, 5 people volunteered to join Chidosei's side. To balance the numbers, Chidosei reluctantly shoved Haki into a locker so the team would have only 4 members. Tama then asked what game they would play. Chidosei proposed a mud battle game, and Naganuma supported the idea, only to be placed into the locker alongside Hachi moments later. Roka suggested a board game next, but Kanji disagreed and preferred a card game instead. Chidosei rejected that option, and everyone turned to Takao for a final recommendation. Takao was confused, considering she had just been treated as an outsider earlier. Meanwhile, Kanji loudly asked for help to be untied from his restraints. Watching the situation unfold, Tama began to think that defeating them might be easier than she had expected. That day, a match was about to take place between the temporary Game Development Club members and the former Student Council. Fujisaki volunteered to act as the referee, which made Kanji wonder who Fujisaki actually was. Naganuma explained that Fujisaki was a man who lived on the edge, while Azuma believed he would definitely be a fair referee for the match. According to Fujisaki, ever since Kanji defeated him in the pouch tournament, he had grown closer to achieving what he called 50% perfection. He felt deeply grateful to Kanji, although Kanji had absolutely no idea what Fujisaki was talking about. Tama then asked what game they were going to play. Chidosei and the others asked Takao to choose the game, and she began explaining the rules. Each player would first write a question on their phone. Once the game started, they had to capture an opponent's phone, answer the question stored on it, and send the answer to the referee for verification. If the answer was correct, the owner of that question would be eliminated. If the answer was wrong, the player who answered would receive a penalty. The game would be played 4 versus 4, and the winning team would be the last one remaining. The entire school would serve as the arena, and the game was called Phone Thief. Kanji quickly understood and summed it up as taking the opponent's phone by force. The intense atmosphere that followed made Takao uneasy, especially when Kanji mentioned that he enjoyed going all out in competitions. Takao clarified that she had only imagined a simple chase game and hoped no one would do anything dangerous. Kanji and Chidosei reassured her that they would keep things safe. Fujisaki then asked both teams to prepare and spread out across the school grounds, announcing that the game would begin in 10 minutes. Before the start, Chidosei declared that if the third-year students won, the Game Development Club would be disbanded. She then asked what would happen if her team won instead. Tama offered a prize of 10,000 yen. Kanji was surprised because the money was a precious gift from Tama's grandfather, but Tama casually replied that money was still just money. Chidosei, Roka, and Sakura immediately became excited about the reward. Kanji found their reaction strange since their club's future was at stake, but for Chidosei, the greatest reward would be seeing the former student council members' expressions when they lost. The game soon began, and everyone scattered across the campus. Chidosei prepared to face Tama, saying she intended to make the game truly exciting. Before leaving, she asked Kanji to take care of Roka. Suddenly, Roka's body weakened, and Chidosei worried that Roka had not fully recovered yet, so she planned to buy some time. Kanji did not understand what Chidosei meant at first. Sakura then explained that when Tama hugged Roka earlier for an unusually long time, it had actually been part of a strategy to weaken Chidosei's team. That was why Chidosei wanted Kanji to stay with Roka and take her to the student infirmary. Kanji questioned why he had to do it, but Chidosei said she had something important to handle because she needed to stop Tama herself. Tama looked delighted when she realized Chidosei was staying behind. Roka briefly worried about Chidosei, but Chidosei told her not to ruin the fun. Roka agreed and urged Kanji to leave quickly with her. Meanwhile, Chidosei and Tama exchanged sharp remarks as they prepared to face each other. Sakura commented that she, Roka, and Kanji felt like supporting characters, but Roka believed they were actually the ones who would carry out an important role in the match. Kanji worried that Roka might not be able to handle it in her condition. Roka began suggesting different ways Kanji could carry her, including a piggyback ride, lifting her in his arms, or carrying her in a princess carry. Takao chose the princess carry, and Roka agreed, claiming it would help her recover faster. Kanji wondered why a piggyback would not work, but Roka suddenly became serious, which startled him. She said she needed to recover for Chidosei's sake. Kanji finally carried her the way she requested, and Roka hoped he would keep carrying her like that for a while. Kenji started to suspect whether she was truly injured since she seemed perfectly relaxed. He jokingly warned that he would set her down immediately if she did not recover soon. Kenji told Chidose that he would return as soon as he finished taking Roka to the student infirmary, and he hoped she would not lose to Tama. Chidose urged them to hurry. At that moment, Takao stood alone nearby, looking like a girl lost in her own thoughts amid the tension of the match. Chidose and Tama prepared themselves for the confrontation, while Takao quickly called Tsutsumi. Not long after, Ataru arrived to offer his assistance. Meanwhile, Funabori was carrying a cake near the stairs when Kenji arrived and asked her to step aside for a moment. Not long after that, Roka and Sakura took the cake from Funabori and immediately started eating it. Kenji's path was suddenly blocked by the orchestra of 14 delinquents, who intentionally closed off the hallway to stop him. He had almost forgotten about them. Apparently, they felt indebted to Tama because she had helped them return to playing at the game center, and they had no intention of forgetting her kindness. Kenji could not help but wonder how much influence Tama actually had. Odawara and his friends prepared to confront Kenji, but Kenji pointed out that their game had not even started yet. Odawara replied that he had no idea what game Kenji was talking about. Kenji realized that fighting them in his current condition would be difficult, and Sakura would also struggle if she had to face them alone. Fortunately, Hachi arrived along with Yokoshima and Hiroshi, offering their support. Hachi stated that Kenji should focus on protecting Roka while they handled the orchestra of 14 delinquents. Soon, other students joined in to help as well. Everyone prepared to face the group together. The hallway became crowded as students pushed past one another, creating a tight and chaotic atmosphere. Kenji felt deeply grateful for their help. Hachi quickly cleared a path by pushing Odawara aside, opening the way for Kenji and the others. Even though the space felt cramped and overwhelming, Hachi seemed to enjoy the excitement of the moment. At that time, the game was set to begin in 3 minutes, and Chidose and Tama started preparing themselves. Meanwhile, Kenji ran through the hallway while carrying Roka. She encouraged him to keep his spirits up. Sakura reminded him that their most important task was getting Roka to the student infirmary. Kenji wondered why they still needed to worry, since Chidose was already facing Tama, the strongest opponent, which should have left only the remaining members. However, Roka explained that all former student council members were formidable opponents. Sakura added that Azuma excelled both academically and athletically, and was also known for her admirable character. Naganuma, on the other hand, was an anime expert who stayed up late watching shows and often kept his eyes closed at school to rest them. Rumor had it that Shinsei possessed an unusual ability that could dissolve objects, making her especially dangerous. Hearing this, Kenji concluded that they needed to be extremely careful around Azuma and the others. The game finally began. As they reached an intersection, Azuma attempted to attack, but Sakura quickly blocked her move. At the same time, Chidose and Tama prepared to begin their own confrontation.